Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, April 29th, 2019. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, we're back. Meanwhile, the stonewalling has begun, as the Trump administration won't testify on anything. Meanwhile, Joe Biden trips into the 2020 presidential race, and Elizabeth Warren drops a massive student debt plan and calls for Donald Trump's impeachment. Busy week for her. Meanwhile, Supreme Court hears the census citizen question. Get ready for a partisan ruling. Meanwhile, a federal court strikes down Michigan's districts drawn by Republicans, again subject to a SCOTUS ruling. Washington State introduces the first long-term care benefit. Just the beginning on that. And we've been gone for a week. Trump still racist. 55% of Americans say they will never vote for him, but a majority are against impeachment. Meanwhile, workers reach a tentative deal with Stop and Shop. That's 33,000 striking workers across Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. Marco Rubio says Russians hacked into Florida's elections in 2016, just in a couple of counties. Don't worry about it. Pretty sure they didn't change anything. Anyway, whatever. And Medicare for All will get a hearing this week, as will Bill Barr get another hearing this week. Terror attacks in California leave one shot dead in a synagogue. In a separate attack in California, 8 injured in a car attack seeking to kill Muslims. And of course, 250 dead, 500 injured in Sri Lanka. Socialist strength and hold in Spain. Lula gets an interview in Brazil, his first in prison. The NRA is in crisis. And lastly, incarceration rates drop in this country. Some good news.
You're welcome.
There you go. All that and more on today's Majority Report. Yes, we are back. I hope that you enjoyed the interviews that we ran during the course of the week. Don't sleep on those, folks. We pick some very good interviews for the week that we're off because we know that people love our liveness.
Some meaty nonfiction. That's how I like to think of the interviews we do on vacation.
Right.
It's got a bit more nutritional value in the long term. It'll stay with you like a probiotic.
Right. Maybe we should get the marketing team to work on some of this.
I thought that was the marketing team.
I was going to say, maybe we need a new marketing team.
Brendan has a very health-centric view of the world. I respect it.
But do not sleep on those, folks. Go check them out. And as always, you can support this program by becoming a member at Join the Majority Report. During vacation, we end up losing a couple of members, and I forgot to pitch it. during that week. So if you've been thinking about becoming a member, now's the time to join. Head over to jointhemajority.report.com. We have so many plans for the future. And we always have plans for the future. Let's start, though, with something that is in the past. And that was Meghan McCain on This Week, ABC's This Week. Now, I know you're asking yourself, wait a second. This Week is supposed to be a network news show where you would you would either interview politicians or newsmakers or someone who really has a strong sense of what's going on in terms of politics. Now, I understand Meghan McCain is on The View because The View is supposed to be about people who don't know anything about anything but have opinions about it. And that's fine. I mean, everybody has an opinion. Everybody. And it's interesting to hear people who are not like experts on stuff, but may read into stuff a little bit, share their opinions. It's The View. That's the nature of it. The View. That's why they call it The View. And so, yeah, it makes sense for Meghan McCain, who is about as not expert at anything. Doesn't seem to be, I mean, I've had a personal experience with her. She seemed perfectly nice in that narrow context of which we related, but it was a trivia style show. Have I got news for you? Like a low threshold and not great at it. I don't judge people that way. I'm just saying that was my assessment. Pertinent information for this because she's now on a network news show pontificating, saying some of the stupidest stuff. If it wasn't so really in many respects offensive, it would be just stupid. Right. Here she is pontificating on the shooting that took place in a synagogue, I think around the San Diego area in California, where a woman was shot to death. She was jumping in front of the rabbi, actually, who was being fired upon. Rabbi, I think, lost part of his hand. There was a couple other injuries. It was a 19-year-old with an AR-15 who spends his time on 8chan, which is like, I guess, the dark web. But they don't pretend it's just generally about ideas. A lot of those ideas are white supremacist and anti-Semitic. And this guy had bragged about, he was going to do something like this. And he had done it timed within, 6 months to the date of the Pittsburgh shooting. And was inspired by the Christchurch shooting. And here's Meghan McCain making what is really an incredibly offensive point about this. Really having to make it about somehow both sides.
Much more quickly than they could with Christchurch, but that is a real issue.
Yeah, and one that I think that Silicon Valley should have their feet held to the fire. I do think when we're having conversations about anti-Semitism, we should be looking at the most extreme on both sides. And I would bring up Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and some of her comments that got so much attention. And in my opinion, Nancy Pelosi wasn't hard enough in her response to her, trafficking in anti-Semitic language, talking about the Benjamins and how Jewish people had hypnotized the world. So I think when you're talking about rhetoric and you want to talk about President Trump, and by the way, I agree that he needs to have his feet held to the fire as well, but we're talking about it on both sides of the aisle as well.
Okay, pause it. Now, let's just take the low-hanging fruit here. The idea that Ilhan Omar was in any way inspiring a white supremacist to do anything is laughable on its face. But Meghan McCain also lied about what Ilhan Omar said in that quote. She never said anything about the Jews. She said that Israel had hypnotized the Congress insofar as their ability to even critique it. When she'd said it was all about the Benjamins, it was literally about the lobbyists who were impacting the Israeli policy within Congress. But the idea that it's both sides are inspiring the shooting, I want to see the shooter who was inspired by Ilhan Omar. I mean, it's pathological. It's pathological. Her Ilhan Omar, whatever you would call that, obsession, blame, fixation.
Obsession. But it's also it's also so obviously cynical because she's using it to advance her career, right? Like, this is what gets her a speaking spot at APEC. This is her way of actually not just being a joke on The View.
Well,
so she's actually inciting against Ilhan Omar, in my opinion, and actually, of course, totally belittling the actual serious issue of anti-Semitism through her disgusting crusade against her.
Let's break this down because we can't know, which is it's obviously it's our opinion that she's doing this for any other reason. Now, one of them could be because she sees it as a career ticket. It gives her something interesting to say because she doesn't have a lot of interesting things to say. This is an interesting thing to say. She's that person who you go to say both sides when a white supremacist kills, shoots at Jews. Right. So you could say both sides. Or it could just be she's really, really not bright, right, and really, really feels like she needs to justify why she carries water for the conservative element in this country. And it's really more about her wondering if she's aligned with people who may be problematic. Or it could be she also has a problem with Muslims. I mean, it could be any of those things. And I think we should, just to be fair, note that lack of intelligence is not mutually exclusive to any of these answers. But it really is, what is really reprehensible in my mind, and I understand it, it's ABC, they're trying to promote The View and this and that, but honestly, can you really look yourself in the mirror, George Stephanopoulos, and say, we had a great show today. We had Meghan McCain on to discuss anti-Semitism. Really? Wow. There are undoubtedly some offspring of politicians who have savvy about politics. None come to mind, frankly. But undoubtedly they exist. But she's just a prominent one. Unbelievable. Meanwhile, folks, we all want a haven, a place that feels uniquely you. With Joybird, you get one-of-a-kind furniture crafted to your unique taste. You can turn your ideas into reality with hundreds of styles and options, from rich buttery leather to the plushest velvet you've ever felt. Want a sofa in aquatic blue? A love seat in bubblegum pink? If you can dream it, Joybird can make it a reality. They even have a beautiful selection of outdoor sofas, lounge chairs, and tables. Plus, their free personal design consultants can help you nail down your design. They also offer a range of kid and pet-friendly upholstery options so your creations can stand the test of time. I wish I was aware of Joybird when we got our couch, because there's nothing like two kids that can't destroy a couch for you. Best of all, thanks to their 365 home day trial, 365-day home trial. If you don't love your Joybird, you can return it for a full refund. See how Joybird can help you design your dream space. Find your joy today at joybird.com/majority. You can create the furniture that brings you joy. That's joybird.com/majority and receive an exclusive offer for 25% off your first order by using the code majority. Joybird.com/majority. Right around the corner is a Joybird store.
That's a very nice
I've
looking
spent
place.
a lot of time in that store sitting on different couches going like, we'll see.
You rustle paper while you do it too.
I sit there with
do you
paper.
Take
and I
the,
go,
you take the ad copy with you?
I
It's
just,
like,
I
oh
just
my
go
God,
like,
Joybird.
maybe the right Bob's Burgers. Maybe if I get into the Bob's Burgers movie. Time to get my living arrangement right now precludes my ability to buy furniture unilaterally. I'm not going to go any further into that, but first off, you trying to drink more water? Both my kids. I took my kids down to Florida this week. I'll get into that a little bit later. It was exhausting, but they were as healthy, I think, as they've ever been because I brought a bunch of Liquid IV with me. Liquid IV hydrates you 2 to 3 times faster and more efficiently than water alone with an added bonus of vitamin C, B3, B5, B6, and B12. Liquid IV is the fastest growing wellness brand. You can find them everywhere, even at Costco. Use Liquid IV to fuel tough workouts, help prevent muscle fatigue, and promote healthy post-workout recovery. It's a great alternative to traditional sugary sports drinks because there's no artificial flavors or preservatives. It's non-GMO, it's vegan, free of gluten, free of dairy and soy. Better yet, it comes in convenient TSA-friendly powder packs that are perfect for travel and preventing jet lag and altitude sickness. So we're in the sun a lot, the kids. In Florida. And every day I was like, guys, drink this 16-ounce thing of water. They will not do it. The Liquid IV tastes great. They drank it, and Mila did not get headaches. Saul did not get flush. I don't know. I don't know how you measure these things, but 5 days this week, the kids did great. They felt, they felt great, but I also knew that they were totally hydrated. And then for me, there was a lot of pina coladas at this place I was at. So this is the way I sort of dealt with that.
At the bar?
Yep.
Pina colada.
It was funny because I went to like sort of a resort thing to take, so the kids could have stuff to do. And I was like literally fighting with other kids in the pina colada line. I had to specifically say non-virgin pina colada. I love Liquid IV, and I know you will too. Right now, my listeners get 25% off at liquidiv.com when you use my code majority at checkout. That's 25% off anything you order at Liquid IV's website. Just go to liquidiv.com, enter my promo code majority. That's liquidiv.com, promo code majority. Don't wait. Start properly hydrating today. And folks, lastly, you spend a third of your life in your sheets. It's about time for a bedding upgrade. Named the winner of the best online bedding category by Good Housekeeping, Brooklinen has more than 35,000 five-star reviews. I will tell you right now, I don't know which number mine is, but one of them is mine. This is because by eliminating the middleman, working directly with manufacturers and customers, Brooklinen offers luxury sheets without the luxury markup. And with over 25 colors and patterns, these sheets don't just feel great, they look great too. Okay, so for me, I'm totally in on the pinstripe. That's what I've decided. I'm going to totally pinstripe it. And I now have the slate, the navy. I don't know if they offer those anymore, but they also have one that's like a sort of like a pumpkin color. It looks good. It looks real good. I love it. I've told everybody this before, but I get the, I think they call it percale. Whatever. They have 2 different types. And you can get the classic sort of crispy, clean, cool cotton ones. That's the ones I do. You don't have to. I'm just saying.
You're free to choose.
Free to choose. My Brooklinen sheets are the best, most comfortable sheets I have ever slept on. And now it's time for your upgrade. Brooklinen.com has an exclusive offer for just my listeners. Get 10% off your first order and free shipping when you use promo code majority at brooklinen.com. Brooklinen's so confident in their product that all their sheets, comforters, and towels come with a lifetime warranty. And I will tell you something. A set of sheets like this, like a good set of cotton sheets, they will last you for 20 years. Believe me. Believe me. The only way to get 10% off your first order and free shipping is to use promo code majority at brooklinen.com. That's Brooklinen, BROOKLINEN.com. promo code majority. Brooklinen, these really are the best sheets ever. Okay, so a couple of big important things that took place this week. Obviously, and I'm going to hit these three things. I want to talk about Warren's plan. I want to talk about Biden jumping into the race. I want to talk about this ruling in Michigan about the gerrymandering that's going on there, because that's pretty big. Now, the NRA is also, I should tell you, came out this week, is apparently in some type of crisis. And I haven't read into this fully, but there's been some leadership things, and there's a big story in the New Yorker magazine, which we're going to dig into, and I'm going to try and get in touch with the reporter, either talk to them on Ring of Fire or have them on here. And but the long and short of it is, the Attorney General's office in New York, I think, is starting to investigate them. Here's the weird part. Just so you have some basic knowledge about this story, the NRA is chartered in New York State, which is the last place you would imagine it would be chartered. It was chartered, I guess, following, or I think on the eve of the Civil War, as an organization that was, it was started by, I think, a couple of Union generals who were unimpressed with the riflemanship of people in New York State and wanted them to be better. And so this association was set up to train them outside of the military. And so it's in New York State. And so this means they are subject to investigations from the New York State Attorney General. Not good. Not good. And the thing is, they could recharter in a different state, but their assets are New York based. And there's like they're like a $400 million, $450 million enterprise. And so there are other gun organizations, some which are like, more gunnish than less culture than the NRA, but they don't nearly have the same funding. So this would be a good malignant force to have not be in the world anymore. So we will talk more about this going forward, but I just wanted to give you some of those basic facts so that you know. So let's talk about Joe Biden. This guy, we didn't pull that tweet that I saw. I tried to stay off of Twitter over the vacation. My whole plan was to go to this resorty place where they have programs for the kids, and I could put the kids in at 9 in the morning, and they're like, see you guys at 3:30 or 4. Dad's gonna read a book, and that didn't work.
You didn't get any reading done?
I'd never had more than 4 minutes, contiguous minutes of solitude, and over the course of 16 hours a day. It was the most exhausting thing. We had a great time. I love being with my kids, and that was fun, but it was exhausting. So all I could do was to escape was to look at political Twitter. That was, yeah, I need another vacation. But so I see this and this was, I guess this was maybe this was just a couple of days ago. Maybe it was Friday.
Yeah.
And I guess it was at night, so we were maybe traveling at this point. And Jen Psaki, who is a mom, and she's a vice president at the Carnegie Endowment. She's a CNN contributor. She's at We Advisors. I'm just looking at her. And National Security Action, former White House comms chief, former State Department spokesperson. And this is the tweet that she had. Now, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a lot of issues that Joe Biden has around women. The touchy thing and getting into people's personal space. I think that's indicative of a guy who doesn't feel like he has any boundaries, who is really very cocksure of himself. And that is something that is, it helps to be a white guy who's been in the Senate for 40 years or whatever it is, to have that sense like, hey, there's no one's personal space. I don't even have to contemplate the idea of personal space. And of course, you don't think that. Being a white guy who's been in the Senate for 40 years is, they say like he's never having to say sorry. It's never having to think about other people, right? So it becomes super easy for you to say, oh, I'm going to have my people float that Stacey Abrams is going to be my VP candidate because that's going to help me. That's going to help shore up the problems I have with women and with maybe, and particularly African-American women because of the whole Anita Hill thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, if you're a person who has respect for other people and you contemplate, hey, maybe she doesn't want to be exploited in that way, you should reach out to her and say like, hey, I'm contemplating. Do you mind if, maybe we should strategize. Well, and then we found out later that, no, he never had that conversation. She was rather upset about it. I think it was pretty clear from her public pronouncements. She didn't say Joe Biden's an a-hole, but she basically said, that was the subtext, in my opinion. Anyways, so Joe Biden has these problems with women. That's it. Anita Hill, just what he did with Stacey Abrams. He did the same thing with Elizabeth Warren, actually, 4 years ago, 2016. And he knew, again, that was like, I have a problem with women. That's Joe Biden saying, I have a problem with women. I have a problem with my relationship to the banks. And that's why he chose Elizabeth Warren to float that year. Because that gives you the idea of like, wait a second, if he's open to Elizabeth Warren, maybe he's not the guy that I think he is. So Jen Psaki, I don't know if she is a surrogate for him. I don't know if she's going to be working in his comms. I don't know. I mean, in some circles, apparently this type of thing is like a huge scandal if they haven't announced that they're working and they're actually doing this. But I'm not one of those people who thinks that's a huge scandal. But here she is writing, Elizabeth Warren would be a beloved Harvard law professor, not a presidential candidate, if Barack Obama and Joe Biden had not worked with her to make her idea to form a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau law. Now, first off, she's wrong because Elizabeth Warren was chosen by Harry Reid to sit on a special committee to deal with TARP when the financial crisis started. And I don't know if it was called TARP at the time, but to sit on a committee to look at the financial crisis well before Barack Obama was president. Secondly, I want to see the documents from that White House. If Joe Biden is going to claim any credit for putting, for choosing Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, who they used to call Senator from MBNA. This is a guy who has been in the banking industry. Now, look, does that make you a horrible person? Well, I mean, in my opinion, yeah, not great. But for most people, I don't. That's fine. But Joe Biden is the reason why the bankruptcy law does not allow for kids to get out of student debt or students in bankruptcy. Joe Biden protected the credit card industry in terms of their protections from people who couldn't afford to pay their credit card bills. That's just who Joe Biden is. And if he wants to claim credit for putting Elizabeth Warren on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, I want to see the documents on that. But lastly, are we going to now analyze Joe Biden? The only reason why Joe Biden can even contemplate running for president a third time after his massive losses is because Barack Obama made him vice president. And I mean, is that going to be the center of his campaign? Is that the way that everybody's going to assess that Joe Biden would just be another aged guy in the Senate at this point? Maybe he would have been challenged by now.
A Neil Kinnock plagiarist.
Exactly.
Top line for him, Neil Kinnock plagiarist.
I mean, honestly,
absolutely.
You would never hear anybody say that about Joe Biden, even though nothing could be closer to the truth.
And of course, I mean, We don't know what Biden's role. I agree with you. I'd love to see that documentation. We do know that she came to national prominence battling this grotesque bankruptcy bill.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That is actually the real reason that she isn't just a quote unquote beloved Harvard professor,
right.
Because she was a national academic and activist against this atrocious piece of legislation that Joe Biden was the prime architect of.
But now what that tweeter, I can't remember her name, is, again, she is doing, you'll recall, how did Scott Brown run against her? Professor. Okay? She is diminishing what Warren has done in creating the most durable, aggressive, what people consider the best government agency we have, set up in such a way that the Republicans can't unwind it, and like they've tried to unwind just about everything else. And there's a little pat on the head, and they send a woman out to do this because at least they have the sensitivity to realize that if they had a male spokesperson do this, they could never get away with it. But make no mistake about it. It is just as demeaning, misogynist, sexist as it would be if a guy was sent out to do it. It's just a little bit more cynical. It really is, stunning. I'm surprised that hasn't gotten a lot more attention. A lot more attention. Here is Joe Biden talking about complaining about the bankruptcy bill and how too many people are getting a free ride in this thing. An awful lot of people who are discharging debt who shouldn't, he said during a 2001 Senate hearing. Something is up. And that happened when the economy was booming, absolutely booming. Now, I'm not a real smart fellow, maybe, but there's something wrong. In other words, he's arguing that when the economy goes up, no one should be going into bankruptcy.
No one should be going.
We also know, and maybe he didn't care at that time, but at least 50% of bankruptcies, particularly in 2001, were a function of medical debt, which, and maybe you're not a smart fellow, it doesn't matter what the economy is doing. If you get hit by a bus, it can cost you and sink you into debt. 50% of all personal bankruptcies.
Some people, this is a letter from the same article that Warren wrote in 2005. Some people do abuse the bankruptcy system, but the overwhelming majority of people in bankruptcy are in financial distress as a result of job loss, medical expense, divorce, or a combination of those causes.
There is not an institution, a system, a business, an agency, a program that is not abused to some extent. I will cop to this right now. At the hotel we stayed at, you give a card and you get a beach towel. Okay? And I sent my kids up to go get an extra beach towel, and I told them, just tell them Dad has the card. So we had 4 towels so that we could save seats. Corruption happens everywhere. But the idea that that's going to be the excuse. You don't think there's corruption in the credit card business? Give me a break. Right. And so when Joe Biden sends out either his attack dogs or his friends of his attack dogs, or either paid or just simpatico surrogates to go out there and attack Elizabeth Warren, there's a reason why he does it. Because he's got a lot of things to answer for. But one of the biggest is how this guy is married to the banks, married to the credit card companies, and not just in a sort of a neutral, benign way, but in a way that fundamentally targets American citizens, that makes their lives materially worse, that allows for predatory practices. And Elizabeth Warren knows it, and that's why he's got to get out ahead and say, she would be nothing but a beloved law professor if it wasn't for me.
I mean,
At a time when the biggest financial institutions in this country were trying to put the squeeze on millions of hardworking families, there was nobody to stand up for them. I got in that fight because they just didn't have anyone. And Joe Biden was on the side of the credit card companies.
That's it. Joe Biden was on the side of the credit card. She's got the receipts. That's the problem. She's got the receipts. So, I mean, it's an odd choice. You would imagine, like, Joe Biden's not in Elizabeth Warren's lane. So why is the first thing that they're doing when they come out the gate in terms of attacking anybody is attacking Elizabeth Warren? They're attacking Elizabeth Warren because they know that she knows who Joe Biden really is. And so they have to discredit her and make her seem like an uppity, ungracious, beloved. Would you ever call like a male a beloved? Like, it's unbelievable how sort of like gendered that attack was. I was really taken aback. And I know Joe will just go like, "Oh, Father, forgive me, I have sinned because I called her beloved." Right?
It's a weird, I've heard it. There's gendered. It's also, and I hope that, it would be bizarre if this is what they were doing for obvious reasons, but it's, I have heard that for men who are basically like beloved, like very old. Like a beloved professor who's
right,
retiring.
like a beloved grandma.
Like
And
beloved grandpa or grandma.
the professor thing also works in terms of like, who are you going to listen to? That egghead over there who's telling you that I'm the one who screwed you on your credit card bills? Or me? Because Joe is really posturing.
Oh, yeah. That's his whole thing.
He's really posturing as like the guy's guy, right? Like the hard hat. Joe Hard Hat.
Middle class Joe.
Yeah, middle class Joe. Here he is. Where was this where he was speaking? This number 3. Oh, wait. Oh, this is the announcement video? Where did you do the today? All right, let's hear the announcement video. Today, he is in Pittsburgh talking to union guys. He is officially kicking off his campaign at the Teamsters Local 429 in Pittsburgh. Do you know where he was Thursday in the unofficial kickoff? He was in Philadelphia at a Comcast fundraiser. Now, aside from Comcast being a wretched company, there was a longtime Biden ally there bundling money, a guy named Stephen Kozin. This comes from Eric Levitz in New York Magazine. Kozin is the chairman of Kozin O'Connor. That is a big law firm.
Do they help people recover from bankruptcies and medical debts?
You know what?
Provide a social service?
You know what? They don't.
Oh, surprising.
Mike Elk over at the Payday Report, noted on Wednesday that if you go to Kozin O'Connor's website, they have a breakdown of what they do for their clients. Labor relations and disputes. So in other words, you got to imagine Joe Hardhat, his best bud, probably protects unions, fights on behalf of unions. And, oh, wait a second. Ooh, no, actually, this is weird. It's the opposite. Kozin O'Connor represents a broad spectrum of private and public sector employers in labor relations and disputes. In other words, they fight against unions. For our unionized clients, we handle unfair labor practice proceedings in grievance arbitrations, negotiate individual and multi-employer collective bargaining agreements, prepare for and respond to picket lines, strikes, lockouts, and other economic campaigns, and work with employers during union election campaigns.
Help them more effectively establish unions in a hostile corporate environment?
Right. We also help employers avoid unionization through positive employee relations and regain non-union status when employees indicate they no longer wish to be union represented. So in other words, they're a union-busting law firm.
Scranton Joe.
Scranton
Bankruptcy.
Joe.
I want you to lose your life because you got hit by a car, and I hang around with some of the scummiest law firms on planet Earth.
But hold on. He also likes to write and script. Here we go. Here's his campaign video.
Charlottesville, Virginia is home to the author of one of the great documents in human history. We know it by heart. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. We've heard it so often, it's almost a cliche, but it's who we are. We haven't always lived up to these ideals. Jefferson himself didn't, but we have never before walked away from them. Charlottesville is also home to a defining moment for this nation in the last few years. It was there on August of 2017 we saw Klansmen and white supremacists and neo-Nazis come out in the open. Their crazed faces, illuminated by torches, veins bulging, and bearing the fangs of racism, chanting the same anti-Semitic bile heard across Europe in the 30s. And they were met by a courageous group of Americans, and a violent clash ensued. And a brave young woman lost her life. And that's when we heard the words of the President of the United States that stunned the world and shocked the conscience of this nation. He said there were, quote, some very fine people on both sides. Very fine people on both sides? With those words, the President of the United States assigned a moral equivalence between those spreading hate and those with the courage to stand against it. And in that moment, I knew the threat to this nation was unlike any I had ever seen in my lifetime. I wrote at the time that we're in the battle for the soul of this nation. Well, that's even more true today. We are in the battle for the soul of this nation. I believe history will look back on 4 years of this president and all he embraces as an aberrant moment in time. But if we give Donald Trump 8 years in the White House, he will forever and fundamentally alter the character of this nation, who we are. And I cannot stand by and watch that happen. The core values of this nation.
Oh, God. I don't
Here we go.
I can't
Come on, man. It's the montage now.
I can't.
Dude,
I can't.
hella silent, bro.
But I want to remind Joe Biden that one of the things that Donald Trump embraces is anti-unionism. That Joe Biden apparently has no problem at least accepting money from some of the biggest anti-union fighters in the country. One of the things that Donald Trump also embraces would be the harshest type of relationship between creditors and those in debt in this country, which apparently Joe Biden has a history of. Dismissive misogyny, acting as if women are simply props for you in some way, like Stacey Abrams or Elizabeth Warren, or frankly, Heather Heyer. Heather Heyer's mom does not appreciate her child being basically reduced to Joe Biden's pitch for why he should be president.
Of course, it's never far from your mind and your heart. Did former VP Biden call you about this?
I got a call from him yesterday at 4:30 in the afternoon. That was the first time I had ever spoken to Joe Biden or anybody related to his office or anything.
What did he say?
I was trying to remember how the conversation started. I remember we talked a lot about bereavement because, he's lost a son and a wife and daughter. And we talked about how forming a foundation helps you survive. But that's really all of the kinds of things we talked about. I think he said something about I would have reached out sooner, but I wasn't sure how you would feel. And I commented, yes, I noticed you didn't mention her name because you hadn't contacted me. So we sort of acknowledge that much.
Do you wish that he had mentioned her name?
Not particularly. It's not about her. The issue is about the hate. It's not about Heather.
Yeah. And so was he calling for your approval or to make sure that you were okay? I mean, what was the upshot of his call?
Probably to make sure I was okay. Apparently there were rumors swirling that I was devastated and traumatized, and none of those things were true.
So in other words, Joe Biden is on a tour right now to make sure he doesn't mess up and appear as if he was invested in these questions, maybe a little bit more than he was. Maybe just a little bit more than he was. I mean, I happen to think that, Joe Biden right now, I think, is basically at the top of the most of the polls at this point. But I have a feeling a lot of this stuff is going to catch up with him. Here is Joe Biden's non-apology to Anita Hill. And apparently Anita Hill, we'll read what she said afterwards.
Knowing you, for as long as I have, I don't know why it took you so long to call her. I wish it had happened earlier.
Well, I tell you what the deal was. I did not, since I had publicly apologized for the way she was treated, I'd publicly said it, I publicly had given credit for her, the contribution she made to begin to change this culture in a significant way, that what I didn't want to do, and I didn't want to, quote, invade her space. I didn't want to get in the situation where this became, and then when I heard all this about and it was legitimate, expecting a call every time the phone rang, and so I spoke to some leading women advocates in this area, someone knew her, and I said, could you see whether she'd take my call?
Yeah.
And I was grateful she took my call.
I think what she wants you to say is, I'm sorry for the way I treated you, not for the way you were treated. I think that would be closer.
Well, but I'm sorry the way she got treated. In terms of, I never heard say, if you go back and look what I said and didn't say, I don't think I treated her badly. I took on her opposition, what I couldn't figure out how to do, and we still haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
How do you stop people from asking inflammatory questions?
Okay, so there's Joe Biden saying, I did nothing wrong. When I knew there was 3 other women who would corroborate at least that type of behavior, of being a victim of that behavior, and I did not bring them in front of the committee, I did nothing wrong. When I let her out there to dangle in the wind, knowing that there was corroboration, I did nothing wrong. Everything is in the passive voice. This is a guy who doesn't get it. What would be so bad for him to say? You got to ask yourself, is it just sheer arrogance? This guy's willing to do just about anything to become president. Is it just sheer arrogance? Or is he afraid that if he apologizes, that he's kowtowing too much to the people that he wants to appeal to? It's one of those two things. I don't know which is worse.
Another more narrow point is, as a chair of the committee, wouldn't he have been in a position to, as an example, like he said, he doesn't know how to stop defamatory statements. If you watch that clip of particularly Arlen Specter just like terrorizing her and trying to completely eviscerate her character and life, he wouldn't have been in a position to step over him and say, hey, you need to reorient your line of questioning here. You can ask a question, you can critique, you can defend your witness, but you're just using a national platform. You're using this hearing to just, personally attack her and potentially even endanger her life. You can't do that. I mean, wouldn't he have been in a position to do even the narrow metric that he just set for himself?
I mean, now you're asking him to ignore Senate comedy and
is that where
criticize one of his fellow?
That probably was it, right?
I would.
But
imagine
he just set that standard for himself. He just said, "What can I do about those comments?" My understanding as chairman of a committee, you can actually do a little bit.
Or
when
you
one
could've-
of your colleagues starts terrorizing
We could look back
a
on
witness.
TV and see that you, you may have, you were like, hey, wait a second. Like, even if you couldn't get them stopped, like, show some measure of defense.
This is
All right.
disgusting. I object to it.
All right, before we get to the fun half, I want to talk about Elizabeth Warren's the student debt plan, because this is pretty great, and this is a program. She goes even further than Bernie Sanders. I mean, let's be honest here. Regardless of there are people out there who I can understand are nervous about the government, actually coming to the material aid of its citizens. I'm not sure why this would be a concern for people, but it is. A lot of us are very used to people sort of just whispering that. Like that's sort of like a second part of the program. Some type of notion of fiscal responsibility, which is just really it's a nothing term. It doesn't mean
moral
anything.
hazard.
Moral hazard, whatnot. But there are really only two people who are presenting any type of plans in this race that are in any way moving things forward away from what Trumpism and Republicanism is. I think everybody is on the same page. We should be very strongly anti-Nazis. We should be very strongly anti-bigotry. I don't think there's anybody in the Democratic Party who wouldn't agree with that statement. I think some are better than others on things, particularly sexism. But broadly speaking, the only thing that's left is who is thinking about the problems that Americans face and offering solutions. And really, Bernie and Warren are the only two who are doing it. And I have to say that Warren is outstripping everybody in terms of what she's proposing, both in terms of the scope and the number of things that she's thinking about. She has come out with a plan that not only calls for one free or a system of free university college in every state, public college. They exist already. It's just a matter of funding them. Some of them are bigger systems than others, depending on the state and whatnot. And certainly they were more or less in existence 35 years ago, 40 years ago, at least in many states. But what this plan would do is it would cancel $50,000 in student loan debt for every person with a household income under $100,000. And then it's basically like a sliding scale. It would give substantial debt cancellation to every person with household income between $100,000 and $250,000. And anybody making over $250,000, it would not relieve their student debt. So it would basically take care of 90 to 95% of student debt in this country, existing student debt, which everyone from like the president of the Homeowners Association of America says it's the greatest inhibition to starter homes, to any economist will tell you out there. It is a huge drag on the economy, just sheerly from a productivity standpoint, but also from the perspective of of innovation, of entrepreneurship, of starting small businesses. And then, if you don't even want to look at it from such sort of crass economic terms, people going out and pursuing the lives that they want to pursue. Like, we don't get the teachers that we should be getting because people are afraid of the debt that they have, and they have to go do something that's going to make them more money on a consistent basis. And yeah, we could talk about any types of professions, or we talk about entrepreneurship or whatever it is. And it's changing also the nature of why people go to get an education. And here's the thing, it's not working. It's not giving the return on investment, in part because a lot of training has been offloaded. The expense of training has been offloaded by corporations onto basically the students and their future workers. So It will give debt relief to about 95% of Americans who have student loan. 75%, it would be entirely forgiven. It would make public 2- and 4-year institutions tuition free. It would expand Pell Grant funding to go toward additional college costs like housing, transportation, food, and books. And this is really big. It would cut for-profit colleges from receiving any federal funds. That includes federal student loans or military benefits.
That will do so much to undermine that whole thing.
It will make it disappear overnight.
It'll disappear. That's amazing.
If you know anything, and you can go back to listen to the interview I did with Tressie Cotton,
Macmillan
Cotton. Something like 90 to 95% of the for-profit universities get their, or I should say, something like 90% of the revenue that for-profit universities get come from taxpayer-funded student loans that then these students rarely see a return on their investment, end up dropping out of the program. These programs are geared towards just holding them through their second payment, which is the largest, which then is the majority of their student loan payment. And that's when the return on investment in terms of holding the students starts to drop for these institutions, businesses. And that's why under the Obama administration, when they started cracking down on the accreditation companies that would accredit these other companies as being colleges and universities, you saw like ITT go out of business overnight. Because once the accreditation, which allows you to get a student loan, gets revoked, student loans can't be spent on that university. They go out of business because they're completely funded by the government in that respect. And there's very, very little data, and all they do is collect data at these schools, believe me, that shows that there's a significant return on investment. And a lot of these people who are going to these schools are basically like 25 to 45-year-old African-American women. In addition, and they make the point of saying that the majority of students who attend for-profit colleges default within 3 to 5 years after they begin repaying what they owe. The majority of students within 3 to 5 years. It would also create a $50 billion fund for historically black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions and add more money to it over time. Why? Because if you are not aware, and maybe you haven't listened to this program over the past 4 or 5 years, we have had in this country, well after the end of the Civil War, I should remind people, and the end of slavery, a government-sponsored, also problems in the private sector, obviously, as well, but even the government has been involved in systemically denying black people the greatest source of intergenerational wealth through real estate, through home ownership, because loans were backed with covenants that said you couldn't sell to black people. I mean, people didn't have the right to vote. You didn't have civil rights until 1965. That there is less wealth in the black community. And as such, there's less money to be spent on giving back to universities for endowment. So the idea is shore up the endowments and the operating budgets of these colleges.
By the way, if you're a white person and want to go to a HBCU, you can just do that.
Yes.
They allow that.
That's true.
Yes.
This is very true.
It's available to white people too. You could maybe, with the help of this program, get some financial aid from that university, from one of those historically black colleges provided by the government. Now, understand, you'd still have financial aid. You'd still have just as many private colleges as you have now. I would contend that you would see prices begin to flatten. I don't know if they would drop, but the rate of increase would stop, because if people have an option, a solid option that is going to be no cost, you're going to start to see a lot more low cost options too. It's going to decrease the pressure. You still may have some Pell Grants and this and that to go to other universities if you want. You still probably would have college loans that might be available in some fashion or another. Maybe government loans, maybe private ones. I'm not sure. If you want to go to a university that is not free or whatnot, there'll be options. Now, where does the money come from? Well, we could just print it. But Elizabeth Warren understands that there are people who are concerned that we need to have pay-fors. She has a proposed tax on America's ultramillionaires and billionaires, which includes the 75,000 wealthiest families in the country. 75,000. Those making over $50 million. That's nuts. That's nuts. It would put an annual 2% tax on the wealth above $50 million and a 1% tax on wealth above $1 billion. Now I know. I hear everybody bitching now. It's like, what? Are you kidding me? I got to pay $1 million a year and I'm left with only $49 million in wealth as I'm generating God knows how much money. It's like, what's the point? I might as well just go on vacation. Stop working. Sure. So much, like I had all that planned. I was going to do all that.
I think the max NBA contract is something like $35 million a year.
I mean, it's just, I don't even know why, like, this is even, the idea that we don't already do this is just obscene. The Warren campaign estimates this would raise $2.75 trillion in revenue over 10 years, meaning her debt forgiveness and universal education would cost less than half of the total revenue raised. And that tax she proposes is so that she has created a fund to fund the many proposals that she's offering. The best argument I heard, and best as in the most laughable, was like, it's a slap in the face to people who've paid off their loans. Yep. You recall all the people who were upset during the Great Depression when the FDR supported mortgage payments.
Slap in the face.
All those people, slap in the face.
And let this be a slap in the face for all those who've been financially responsible.
Here's
suckers.
Here's a slap in the face. When I went to college, it was like $15,000 a year.
Right.
How about the slap in the face that's coming to me when I got to send my kid to college and it's
$55,000 a year?
Somebody told me it was $75,000 to go to NYU.
Yeah, well, I believe that. Yeah, NYU could be on the upper reaches of that racket.
I was having this conversation with somebody and I was like, wait, what? What?
Woke a mile up in a sweat. Oh, Dad, what is it? You're not going to NYU.
Practice your goddamn singing. I'm already training Saul to fence. That's what I like. I read somewhere that like you get a fencing scholarship.
That's a good obscure one.
Exactly.
Yep.
You got to find something narrow.
Yep.
And he likes pirates.
He should learn.
He likes pirates.
Fencing and like Ukrainian or something.
Alternatively, Elizabeth Warren becomes president and she convinces the Senate. I mean, the beauty of these proposals, and obviously, you know, anybody can come up with any proposals as a presidential candidate, and they can't guarantee delivery. But it certainly enhances the chances that they'll get the delivery. And there's a lot of political scientific research, actually. It shows that that presidential candidates deliver on most of their promises. And, you know, we have seen what a Republican Congress is willing to bend themselves into a pretzel to provide for Donald Trump's, you know, everybody's going to wear their underwear on their outside, and only white people can drive, you know, pronouncements, essentially. But this is also in the words of Bill Burton, forcing us to dare to something the imagination.
And maybe we need a solution to it that risks the imagination of a new kind of possibility.
Actually, I was thinking of the whole time you were explaining that excellent policy set of how upsetting it was going to be for Howard Schultz. Of course, not to read it. Like, he'll just read the headlines, but that's probably sent him into his own emotional lather for a couple of days himself.
I feel like the one under-examined part about Biden entering the race is where does Howard Schultz do now?
Howard Schultz is going to I think he is this close to officially saying, well, look, remember that piece that came out in Politico a couple of months ago? The Wall Street guys said in that piece, they said the people that are not acceptable to them are Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Everybody else is doable. I think Schultz is right on the verge of formally making that. I mean, that's obviously what his position is. Yes.
Right. All right. Lastly, let's just check in on this Judge Napolitano, because obviously there was, and I'm still winding my way through the Mueller report. It is quite clear. There's a couple things about the Mueller thing, because obviously there was we had a little contention here. And we're going to have Marcy Wheeler on sometime in the coming week or two, as soon as we just work the scheduling out, to go over what we now know is in the Mueller report. And there's a couple of things clear. Obviously, nothing has changed in terms of the way that some elements of the media, some elements of the Democratic Party, played this, at least in terms of the Mueller investigation. We still don't know what's in the intelligence investigation, and I suspect we're going to know more. The bar, obviously, from an intelligence accusation is lower than it is from a criminal investigation. But there was a couple of things that were quite clear in the wake of the Mueller report. One is that there was evidence of collusion, but not enough to substantiate a conviction. There was, and by collusion, because there is no criminal definition of collusion, which we have also, been aware of for a long time, the only thing that could have been charged would have been if the Trump campaign actively worked with Russian government officials to do what Russian government officials did in the campaign. So if they here's a computer that you could use to go and hack into Florida's election system.
Oh, really? Thank you, bro.
Love it.
Love it. Computers.
Or you guys should target these Facebook groups. That would have been necessary to prove based upon the conspiracy charges. What clearly did happen, according to the Mueller report, is that the campaign was aware of what the Russians were doing, and the Russians were aware that the campaign wanted them to and were willing to do stuff. And it was just one of those things where it's like two people realize they have aligned incentives, and we don't need to do anything. We just have the guy go out and say, keep doing it, Russia. If you got those 30,000 emails, that would be good. And Russia can say, we like, what the Trumps...
making deals.
Right. We making deals. This is more just like the type of corruption that we rail against every single day. Like Joe Biden going to a Comcast, lobbyist. I mean, it's basically that kind of stuff. One would think that as the head of a presidential campaign, you would say hey, you're a foreign government. You really shouldn't be doing this, as opposed to keep doing it. So the obstruction charge, we also know that Mueller explicitly said, we can't charge anything. We can't charge the president with anything because of the DOJ Office of Legal Counsel. So there is a constitutional process to deal with these things. What is that constitutional process? Well, go read the Constitution. It's called impeachment. It's called Congress to look at it. So Bill Barr did subvert what Mueller wanted to have happen and anticipated would happen, which would be that the obstruction charges would go to Congress. There's obviously a lot more in the report, but those are the big takeaways in terms of those two issues. The other, in terms of the critiques, and I'm looking back to the, I wouldn't call what happened with Michael Tracy in any way enlightening, other than his, he was going to spend 10 minutes to tell me that he was agnostic about the starting of this investigation that he thinks is actually like World War III starting now. But if it was the case that Donald Trump was specifically acting more, belligerent towards Russia than necessary because of this pressure, because he was reacting to the pressure from the Mueller investigation, which he must have known would completely exonerate him because he knew that he didn't do anything. Then I guess we would see, broader overtures or more peace now would be breaking out now that the public has exonerated him or in some way. The idea that this was a gift to Donald Trump, that Democrats and the news media gave Donald Trump an electoral gift, is not borne out by any of the data. Donald Trump's favorability rating is about as low as it's been. The number of people who would vote against him is about as high as it's been. The number of people thinks he was lying about Russia and that this report makes him look bad is about as high as it could be. The idea that this was a gift to Donald Trump, if that's one of your talking points as to why there should have been nothing but skepticism around this investigation, I'm sorry, it just doesn't bear out. This investigation has uncovered a tremendous amount of corruption. This investigation would not have done so, likely, were it not for the premise in which it was launched. There wouldn't have been a special prosecutor. So it's uncovered a tremendous amount of corruption. It's also continuing to do so. There are many other investigations that were thrown out, that were basically placed out of this primary investigation. So if this investigation did not have happened, you would not have found these other investigations. You would not have had these other ongoing investigations. Obviously, there were excesses in the media coverage, but largely it seems to me that, and I don't think those critiques are invalid, but it really is like obsessing over the graphics and the music used for the invasion of the Iraq War that the media is using. Yeah, disgusting, wrong, shouldn't happen, part of a bigger problem, a societal disease, et cetera, et cetera. But there was also the war was also, highly problematic. And if you start to look into the substance of this stuff, I think it was always, sort of ridiculous to assume that the Trump campaign had the facility to help Russia in their involvement in the campaign, whether you think it had any material impact or not. I guess conceivably, we still don't know why the polling data was given to a guy with connections to the Russian government. We'll never know because Manafort lied about that. And we don't know why it was necessary for Manafort to lie and pretend like he was, working with the government when in fact he was feeding information to the Trump administration. We just don't know. But I don't know. And if you don't believe me, why not believe a guy who would be extremely skeptical as to whether there was law breaking that took place? And whether you can actually be charged with obstruction if you can't prove an underlying crime.
So when the president asked his former advisor and my former colleague at Fox, KT McFarland, to write an untruthful letter to the file knowing the government would subpoena it, that's obstruction of justice. When the president asked Corey Lewandowski, his former campaign manager, to get Mueller fired, that's obstruction of justice. When the president asked his then White House counsel to get Mueller fired and then lie about it, that's obstruction of justice. When he asked Don McGahn to go back to the special counsel and change his testimony, that's obstruction of justice. When he dangled a pardon in front of Michael Cohen in order to keep Cohen from testifying against him, that's obstruction of justice. Why not charge him? Because the Attorney General of the United States would have blocked such a charge. Because the Attorney General of the United States is of the view that obstruction of justice can only occur if you're interfering with a criminal investigation of yourself. But that's not what the obstruction statute says, and that's not what law enforcement believes, and that's not what prosecutors do. Prosecutors prosecute people who interfere with government functions. And that's what the president did by obstruction. Where's this going to end? We don't know. But I'm disappointed in the behavior of the president. His job is to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, to uphold and to enforce federal law, not to violate it. If he had ordered his aides to violate federal law, to save a human life, or to preserve human freedom, he would at least have a moral defense to his behavior. But ordering them to break federal law to save him from the consequences of his own behavior, that is immoral, that is criminal, that is defenseless, and that is condemnable.
Now, that is Democratic Congressman. No, wait a second. I'm sorry. That is
Is that Jerry
MSNBC
Nadler?
host. No, wait a second. No, that is Judge Napolitano on Fox News. And in fact, they wouldn't even let him shoot that in the building, apparently. They had to shoot it out in the street on 6th Avenue.
You had to grab the intern.
I think I know who I want to shoot on 5th Avenue.
Mueller anticipated Congress looking at these questions of obstruction. And Bill Barr, who was picked because he did a 19-page memo describing why obstruction could not exist in this context without even knowing the facts. As a matter of law, it can't exist. Because if it's the case, and now Trump is refusing to let any of his people testify in front of Congress, the argument is basically, if Mueller was not allowed to give this to Congress, and the Justice Department says you cannot indict a sitting president, basically what we have is a situation where there is zero legal accountability for a sitting president. Nobody has ever asserted that. Well, maybe Nixon, but nobody has ever asserted this in their right mind, has ever asserted this. And by preventing Congress from looking specifically at that obstruction case, that is the subtext of the argument. Now, Congress is going to hopefully continue to investigate. And I hope we get proceedings. I mean, look, impeachment is a process, right? Do I think they should have an impeachment vote anytime soon? No. And I think they should continue and investigate, because let the American public see really have a sense of what's going on. And see if they come around on impeachment, because it's a political process. And at the very least, holding them to account by investigating, making this stuff public. Personally, I am very much in favor of impeach the guy once he's out of office in 2020, 2021. I would feel much more comfortable about saving the impeachment hearings for then. But that's a different issue. But, all right. Oh, gosh, we should go. Fun half. Folks, don't forget, you can support this program. We usually don't go this long, but, we were gone for a week, really 8 days because of Passover. So you can support the free show by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. And as a way of thank you, we give you extra content every day, except for, I guess, when we're on vacation, guys. In the fun half, we do all sorts of fun things, like mock Dave Rubin, or
got some good Dave Rubin stuff.
Mock Louis Gohmert, or no, actually, let me rephrase this. Talk about big ideas about Dave Rubin. Big ideas about Louis Gohmert.
I'm more interested in making fun of ideas than people.
I'm glad he's getting some criticism. I think it seems like he's getting criticism from all the right places.
I think he'll like it too, as someone who has fidelity to ideas, likes to see him challenged.
Make you think better.
Steel man ideas only, no
steel,
straw man
right.
ideas. We need steel man ideas.
When I think of Dave Rubin,
we will take your phone
steel
calls.
man ideas.
We will take your phone calls. We will read your IMs, 646-257-3920. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. You got a couple of days to get 30% off your coffee. We bought 2 5-pound bags of Majority Report blend. So we may start our own little coffee shop here. Join the Majority Report, just pennies a day. Michael, back from your LA extravaganza.
Yes, indeed.
Are you going to be doing a show this week?
Yeah, just take a break. No, by the way, LA was great. Thanks to everybody who came out. Thanks
good to see you.
Yeah, that was an amazing show. Thanks for the gifts. Thanks for all of the, it was amazing. We appreciate all of you. Tomorrow night, Dr. Maitha Al-Hassan is going to join us to talk about her book and also the connections between the uprisings and changes happening in Sudan and Algeria, Joe Biden, Pete Buttigieg, all sorts of stuff we got to hit. There might be a surprise in-studio guest, so you'll find out about that tomorrow if that indeed is the case. Check out the new illicit history of Deutsche Bank, from the Nazis to Donald Trump, Michael Brooks' show on YouTube, patreon.com/TMBS to get the whole thing.
Jamie is still on extended vacation, but check out The Intifada, patreon.com/The Intifada. And Matt with his new home studio.
Yeah, I got a new home studio, guys. So patreon.com/literary hangover to help me pay for not having a roommate anymore. I've got two new episodes that came out on April 19th. Looking Back on the Spanish War by George Orwell. It was written in 1943. It kind of he thinks of the Spanish Civil War as sort of the beginning of totalitarianism and sort of the inability to distinguish what's true in history. So check that out if you're interested in fake news. And then for patrons only, I have a new George Orwell reading series called Orweller. And the first episode of that is up. It's called, from his essay, Spilling the Spanish Beans, which is right after he returned from, after getting shot in the throat by a fascist in Spain, where he talks about how it's actually the problem with the communists and the liberal democracies, where they were pretending that the Spanish Civil War was just democracy against fascism, when really there was like an attempt at a classless society revolution. And so it was sort of like the problems of the Popular Front, how we talk about how we have to make amends with people like Jonathan Chait now, and you see what gets erased when you make those sorts of alliances. So check that out, patreon.com/literary hangover.
All right, folks, quick break, fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous, you're a little bit upset, you're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501457. 238 56, 27, 1/2, 5/8, 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy!
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
Do.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way! Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
yes, folks, we are back. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. It is the famous fun half of the program wherein we do all sorts of fun things. Let me just set this up here. Okay. Let's go to the phones first. Or let me do a couple IMs and we'll do some phones. Contagious Chameleon. Watching that View interview with Biden, he seems way older than Bernie. Jonathan Armstead. I was stir crazy while you guys were out. I started on a Majority Report theme project. Michael Jamal, you go on Spotify. I've built the Nation of Islam Obama playlist. This is the real deal. No U2 or Coldplay, just the best anti-Yakubian music that fit a Kenyan Muslim socialist, starting with Whitney on the Moon by Gil Scott-Heron. It goes on to include Brand Nubian.
That's a Whitey on the Moon.
Whitey on the Moon. Oh, sorry. The Coup, Ice Cube, Nas, and of course, Lauryn Hill. You can find it all by going to Spotify and searching Nation of Islam Obama. Michael's in the bathroom, but we tell him about that. West Coast Comrade. Welcome back, crew. On Meghan McCain, if she's equivocating white supremacist shooters with Omar's comments, then she admits that her side has all the racists, bigots, and murderers, and the left says mean things. One of these things is not like the other. Check out on Spotify the Nation of Islam Obama playlist that Jonathan Armstead set up. Brock from VA knows a lot of right-wingers saying we're a republic when people say something undemocratic lately. It seems like people on the right are trying to prime their base for openly supporting voter suppression and trying to prime their and overriding popular opinion, like they're anticipating people getting mad at their judges, pushing draconian abortion and labor laws. Is this a new phenomenon, or have you noticed this for a while? Well, they have always done this. They've always said we're a republic, not a democracy. And we see, we have multiple examples of Republican state leadership overriding referendums, whether it was on the emergency manager law in Michigan, whether it's been expansion of Medicaid. There's been a couple of these.
Felon reenfranchisement.
Felon reenfranchisement. I mean, we see this across the board. They don't want to come out and say we are anti-democratic. So they say, well, we're a republic. We were not set up in such a way. Let's go to the phones. Calling from 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam. It's John from San Antonio.
John from San Antonio. How are you, John? Did you enjoy your break?
Yeah, definitely. I hope you enjoyed your vacation.
Oh, thank
it's good to have you back.
Thank you.
Okay, so before Trump was inaugurated in the first few months as president, you talked frequently about not normalizing Trump. And you had Masha Gessen on and Timothy Schneider on shows and talking about tyranny and authoritarianism. Trump has done all unlawful things before, and they've been struck down by the courts. He's also had some surprise rulings, like the Muslim ban, and he's probably going to win on the census citizenship question. You talked about that earlier.
Right.
But his stance on oversight is truly unprecedented. No other president in the history of our country has refused to hand over oversight documents. Now he's told government employees not to comply with subpoenas. Justice Department Attorney John Gore refused to show up for deposition concerning the Trump administration push to add a citizenship question. Last Tuesday, the former White House personnel security advisor Carl Klein skipped the deposition scheduled as part of the committee's probe into whether the Trump administration mishandled the security process for top officials or the vacation the Trump administration blew through another deadline concerning tax returns. The House wants to interview Stephen Mueller about immigration policy, and the White House refused. The White House also filed a lawsuit that the House can't subpoena his financial records from Mazars, Trump's accounting firm. Now Barr is threatening not to comply with House oversight on Thursday. The reason they're doing this is that they think they can get away with not complying. This is because Democrats are refusing to enforce subpoenas by taking people who won't comply to court and not having them arrested. The main press is acting like the White House has the advantage, when the truth is the Democrats have been paralyzed by fear to not enforce subpoenas through the courts. Political calculation is unavoidable to some degree, but if you look at Bernie Sanders' rise in status, it's because he doesn't rely on political calculation. He expresses his opinion about his issue sets and persuades the public about them. Mainstream Democratic office holders and most centrist Democratic voters are captured by political calculation. You see this in people who want to vote for the person who has the best chance to beat Trump, not on the issues. House Democrats can't pass a variety of bills, including a bill to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour because of conservative blue dogs who are afraid they might lose to a Republican, despite the Democrats gaining 40 seats in the House. And, of course, impeachment. And I don't think that they have the votes for in the House right now. Do you agree that Democrats are over-reliant on political calculation? And how does Trump's contempt for oversight show his most authoritarian tactic? And can you elaborate on your answer?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. This stuff, this non-sexy administrative stuff, ignoring subpoenas, not providing Congress with information that they should have. This is stuff that is going to be. This becomes ensconced in our law. Like, this is the next president is going to cite these actions as a way of avoiding oversight. It is highly problematic. It is. Not only do I agree with your assessment that Democrats are being too timid in this because they're afraid of becoming the story because they're going after Trump, but I also think it's like electorally a bad strategy because you need to be active. You need to be proactive. They need to see you do something. You need to put Trump on the spot. They should be. They should be sending out the sergeant at arms basically to arrest anybody who doesn't show up for a subpoena. Otherwise, they're going to lose the subpoena power. I don't know that you could call it authoritarian, although it's certainly like on the road to authoritarianism. If you do not have the checks and balances, if Congress does not have the ability to assess what the president and the executive branch has been doing, yeah, it's highly problematic, and I think Democrats are doing a crappy job. Well, they're They're not doing a crappy job about talking about it because they don't see it as their job, frankly. It's a huge mistake. And I would, who's been writing a bunch of stuff about this that people should follow him on Twitter is Jeff Hauser at the Revolving Door Project. He's been basically ringing this alarm for a long time. They need to be much more aggressive with investigations. And you need to be aggressive about seeking this information. Appreciate the call, John.
All right, thank you.
Bye. He's right. All right. Dave Rubin has been doing a lot of stuff since we've been gone, and we got to talk about him a little bit. Do we have the clip of did you pull the clip of him, the one where he was on the interview in Britain and they played the clip of Anna?
I have that available if we want to go to that
Okay, yeah,
too.
let's get that too.
It's hilarious.
But there is a
he hears the truth in real time.
There's a YouTube guy. Is this Timba on Toast? Is this the guy who does these?
Yep, Timba on Toast. TIMBAH and then .on.toast.
I would recommend people go and watch every one of these chapters, essentially,
They're
of Dave
excellent.
Rubin's Battle of Ideas. But this is a segment from Dave Rubin's Battle of Ideas, Part 3. And this involves Dave Rubin. Now, look, we played this clip, I think, last week before we left about Sam Harris. Sam Harris was talking about Tommy, what's that guy's name?
Robinson.
Tommy Robinson, who was, if I'm not mistaken, was arrested in Britain for hate speech. He's, how would you describe him?
In my opinion, I would assess him, in my view, as a far right. I would say fascist would be my
anti-Muslim,
opinion.
particularly.
Primarily an anti-Muslim activist and affiliated with UKIP and and the English Defence League, which definitely has, and also a member of the British National Party. So, I mean, extreme far right.
And at the very least, we know the British perceive him to have been, guilty of something?
I believe incitement.
Incitement or something.
I think it was something to that effect.
So Dave, Sam Harris, is talking about this guy seems perfectly reasonable to me. I only watched an hour-long video. I'm not from Britain. I only watched an hour-long video of him on Dave Rubin, but he seemed perfectly rational for an hour, as if this is a huge accomplishment, as if there isn't an extraordinary amount of data and anecdata that shows that what extremists do is attempt to get into the mainstream, and they know they have to play to a more mainstream audience. And that's the way that they basically, create their sales funnel. And Dave Rubin is the sales funnelist of the funnels when it comes to basically sending people down an alt-right rabbit hole. I mean, look, there is a dark web. And the things that happen on the dark web are credit card numbers and social security numbers get sold and racists hang out.
Child pornography.
Right. Okay. So the intellectual
Good
dark
branding.
web, they think they're being ironic. But the fact is what they are is we're the ones who basically genetically mutate the dark web and bring it out into the open so that people can see it and follow it back down to its rabbit hole. And this is a perfect example of it. Dave Rubin either does no work about who he has on as guests, just looks at maybe whether they're popular within, alt-right and right-wing circles, or he ignores what he finds so that he doesn't have to deal with stuff that's unpalatable because he wants to sell this to a broader audience. Here is a perfect example of it as narrated by Timba on Toast.
Well, it's parodying itself.
Wow. Well, listen, it's powerful stuff, and I love doing this because I think a lot of this, it flips conventional thinking on its head.
And whilst we're speaking about Sotomayor, there's another topic which might have been of interest to Dave's viewers, which Dave never brought up. And that is Tommy's controversial stance on Jewish people.
Pause it. Now, okay,
Recently,
so he's talking
Dave-
about an interview that he did of this guy, Tommy Sotomayor. who is, I don't know, is he a YouTube guy or what? I don't know exactly.
Yeah, apparently.
And so this is going into Rubin's, attacks on people for being anti-Semitic. Good for him. There's a lot of tweets that he's put out there. I'm sure it's been, if you updated it with like the Ilhan Omar things, he was very offended. But here we go.
And that is Tommy's controversial stance on Jewish people. Recently, Dave has been fiercely cracking down on anti-Semitism on Twitter, dealing out some harsh criticism for those who he perceives to be displaying anti-Semitic attitudes. Well, you might say, if Dave thinks those people are bad, I can only imagine the hard-hitting questions he'll have for someone who has appeared in podcasts with former Grand Wizard of the KKK, David Duke, and denied the Holocaust.
We don't have to go back that far, Dr. Duke. We can go right now to Black Lives Matter. Who started it?
Jews.
You as a white man should want to push whites in America to concentrate more on education, because Jews push that to their people, and then they push alcohol to your people in mind. They push drugs to your people in mind.
Now, I want you guys to understand, Jews are financing black folks' genocide. This is what's happening. They're financing your genocide.
Now, I know what people are going to say. They're going to say, well, wait a minute, you can't say that because Jews and the Holocaust, and they didn't choose to be in the Holocaust. Yeah, they did. The Jews did the same thing. They literally could have walked out of that situation and said, we don't want to do it. But that ain't what they said.
For some reason, although Dave never misses the
Pause
opportunity
it. I gotta.
I have an idea, Shlomo. How about we just walk out of here? There's an exit sign in the other direction. Maybe we could just leave.
Nah.
But then we won't be able to ply white and black people alcohol later. Oh, the dilemmas.
We're all going to gather around. One of us is going to survive, and it's going to be your job to sell the darkies and the whiteys, the booze and the pills.
He'll sell the booze. And your cousin, he's bookish. Eli, you write a whitey book about all this. The plan's in place.
Okay. So this is TJ Sotomayor, like a series of different videos.
It's very provocative ideas. Provocative ideas.
Big ideas.
I got to tell you, I mean, as someone who, not anymore, but was willing before the mass incitement against her to say that years before she was a congresswoman, she could have phrased a tweet more differently. I think this is quite a stark contrast to Ilhan Omar's ever-ready commitment to say, I'm willing to learn and I condemn anti-Semitism.
Right.
For some reason, although Dave never misses the opportunity to go to bare knuckles on Twitter for anti-Semitism on the left, when he's in the presence of someone on the right who explicitly pushes anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial on a regular basis, he avoids the topic completely. During the hour-long interview, Dave never asks Sotomayor a single question about this.
Wow.
And there's one more thing which I want to show you before we move on.
Now, just contemplate this. I don't know. Maybe those two different interviews he did with David Duke, and that one time on his video, he, said the Holocaust was basically an opt-in situation for Jews. Maybe, Dave didn't know about them maybe there was just no way to find that. I don't even know who TJ Sotomayor is, but of course I'm not inviting him on the show.
Right.
And, we don't do extensive online research of our guests. Now, we have 4 to 5 times more guests a week, I think, than Dave does. One would think that would come up in some of your research. What do you think about the Jews? But apparently, even though Dave is such a huge fighter against anti-Semitism, not that much of an issue. Doesn't want to scare anybody. I don't want to get into that big idea.
Well, as Tim Bon Toys points out later in the video, Dave is self-consciously having conversations with quote-unquote controversial people, but never does any sort of look into what is controversial about these people.
Right.
It's
the dark web. You can't say this stuff anywhere else. Well, why don't you ask him why? Why can't you say that stuff? Who's preventing you from going out there and saying on YouTube, Holocaust denialism? But it gets even better. I wonder if Dave brought up any other things that maybe this guy has an issue with.
And there's one more thing which I want to show you before we move on. Foreshadowing this interview with Tommy Sotomayor, Dave delivers a monologue about how open-minded conservatives are compared to the left, and highlights their acceptance of LGBTQ rights.
Do you know people on the right who are tolerant of people who are for gay marriage and who are pro-choice? I actually do, plenty of them, including several people who I've had on this show. When there is a disagreement, I see way more people on the right, conservatives or libertarians, more often willing to agree to disagree rather than to defriend or to smear. Let's not forget, even Donald Trump got a standing ovation at the Republican National Convention when he talked about protecting LGBTQ rights.
This is ironic.
Pause
because
it.
as it turns
That was a great standing ovation that he got. Transgender people now barred from the military. Just today, we had more attacks on transgender folks' rights. But as long as he got a clap for it. But go ahead.
He talked about protecting LGBTQ rights.
This is ironic because, as it turns out, Dave's conservative guest of that episode, Tommy Sotomayor, didn't actually know that Dave was gay. On a live stream months after the interview, one of Sotomayor's fans broke the news to him, and here's how he reacted.
Stephen said, they hate Dave Rubin because he's a gay man with the wrong opinion. Dave Rubin is gay? No! He got a husband? I did not know. I was in his presence. I didn't know. I shook his hand. I sat down with him. Why did y'all tell me before I went on the show? Oh, Stephen, why would you send me this? Oh my God, Stephen, you ruined my day.
Maybe this guy Sotomayor's anti-gay feelings never came up. That was the first time maybe that people were aware that he was anti-gay.
I was more interested in talking about ideas.
I mean, your reaction really fascinates me. Can we talk about that?
We
You
talk
said you
about
want to
that?
wash your hand. Like, what is it?
What does that mean?
What are you implying about?
You know,
my
it's
hand?
really, I don't know if we're going to play the fuller clip, though, where basically the guy was on to, like, trash the black family, like, literally, like, 1960s style, like, conservative tripe nonsense. So that is what Dave's interested in. He's not interested in the Holocaust stuff. He's not interested in the homophobia stuff, but the core brand proposition of trashing black people.
I would also add,
That seems to be what they're
circling
interested in.
back to Donald Trump's gotten applause for protecting LGBTQ rights. In addition to the transgender ban in the military, Trump administration is planning to roll back protections for transgender patients while empowering healthcare workers to refuse care based on religious objections. This is according to 3 officials with knowledge of the pending regulations. And then this isn't necessarily included, I guess. He didn't get applause for this, but the Trump administration was asked to pass a UN resolution to end sexual violence in war. Apparently, the United States said, no, we're not going to do that. They passed a watered-down version, diluted by the Trump administration, because you don't want to get overly uptight about sexual violence during war.
Where does it end?
It's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. You start doing it in war, and then all of a sudden you're going to be doing it in domestic in peace.
Civilian life. Civilian life.
All right, and this is also a fun video. Can we get this video of Dave Rubin? He was in Britain doing his British tour, and he was asked, a series of questions. And at one point, the host of the program, and I'm not sure what the name of the program was, some British guy. It's go back just it's that program No Filter, and I can't remember what the name of the host is. Got to go back just a little bit there. It start right here. Okay.
Dave receiving the truth in real time.
Yeah, this is him being forced to watch Anna Kasparian on the Young Turks explain and dish her opinion of Dave Rubin, having had worked with him up close. Now, the interesting thing about this is both to watch Dave Rubin's face as he's listening to this stuff, and then what I found really fascinating was his refusal to actually respond to what Kasparian said. He responded to claims that were not made. Now, We have said in the past that Dave Rubin receives funding from the Koch brothers. Now, of course, the Koch brothers don't pay Dave Rubin directly. They fund a institute in a libertarian think tank in what university is that? I can't remember.
George Mason.
George Mason. And that Liberty Institute pays him. So technically speaking, the Koch brothers do not pay him. He just gets money from a Koch-supported right-wing libertarian think tank. But listen to how he responds to Anna Kasparian's criticism that he left not because of politics, but because he wanted to make more money. Not he asked for more money and was rejected. That's important.
Can I please finally tell the truth about why he left the Young Turks? He wanted to make a 6-figure salary to host a 30-minute-a-week show when everyone here, because we work for an independent news company, was getting paid far less while working 12-hour days. That's why Dave Rubin left the company. And now all of a sudden he's getting funded by the Koch brothers, and all of a sudden his opinions are very different. He has no political identity. He is not an honest actor. He is not an intellectual. He is a fraud. That's who Dave Rubin is.
I
wish I knew how she really felt. Boy, that's.
But no point where to begin. Fraud, lazy, avaricious. Immoral. You wanted more money.
First off, I never asked for. It's so silly to even, unfortunately, to have to talk about these little nonsensical things. Because I like talking about ideas, not about people. I never asked for more money. That's number one.
Pause
I
it.
left. I
Pause
told
it.
them I was leaving.
Pause it. First off, she never claimed that he asked for more money. He's completely making up a different. It's not, I didn't want more money. He never asked for more money. She never said he asked for more money. He's not disputing what she said. And this is silly. Like, I don't like to talk about. They're having him on as a profile. But this is beneath him to talk about.
I'm more interested. I want to talk about ideas.
I would talk about ideas, not about
there was an
me
idea about
as the
freedom.
interviewer. Yeah.
And then and now watch as he proceeds to sort of validate what she was saying.
Silly to even, unfortunately, to have to talk about these little nonsensical things. Because I like talking about ideas, not about people. I never asked for more money. That's number one. I left. I told them I was leaving, and I left. There were no negotiations. That's it. Actually, my executive producer, who I brought with me, they offered to double his salary if he stayed. So together we would have made more money if we'd stayed. But that has nothing to do with nothing.
Does it make you
I would say no. It's kind of pathetic, really. I'm not funded by the Koch brothers. I mean, I wish I was funded by the Koch brothers. That would be nice. I wouldn't be wearing H&M underwear. I mean, it's like. This is what I'm talking about. It's that sort of endless hysteria, attacking people, attacking motives. Nobody's interested in that anymore. I really don't think people are interested in that.
Are you saying this show is boring?
Dave needs to stop plagiarizing my impersonation of him.
Right.
I'm putting Dave Rubin on notice to stop stealing my impression of him for his talking points.
It really is. Like, it's blatant.
It's incredible.
He's completely stealing your shtick.
All he does is do my shtick as himself.
It's nuts.
At least do your own shtick, not an impersonation of your shtick.
Get your own personhood or whatever.
Yeah, Jesus.
Crazy.
Become your own person. Don't just do the person that I'm making fun of you being.
Also, 2 months ago, they announced a new partnership with the Ayn Rand Institute, which, among other sorts of fundraisers, has ties to the Koch brothers.
Yeah.
But somehow he still can't even get Uniqlo underwear.
I was gonna say,
very, very specific.
Is underwear that expensive?
I
mean, I have some Uniqlo. I've tried to make the move.
Uniqlo is good for that,
but it's mostly Fruit of the Loom for me. I like them. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm interested in talking about ideas.
Let's go to. Listen.
Just pure ideas.
Listen.
All ideation with that guy.
Right. So in the wake of, we've now had multiple shootings in temples, synagogues over the past year. If it seems to you like there's more anti-Semitism in the country, or at least more actions that of hate based in anti-Semitism. You would be right by any possible measure. Statistically speaking, there's been a huge jump in anti-Semitism since Trump has been elected. But Louis Gohmert wants you to know that Donald Trump is in no way responsible because his kid married a Jew.
I mean, earlier today, after this tragic shooting at the synagogue, you had somebody saying, well, I blame this violence on the president's rhetoric. You've got the most pro-Israel. I mean, for heaven's sake, he's got a son-in-law that's Jewish. This man has done more for Israel, according to Netanyahu, than any president we've ever had, and yet they want to call him anti-Semitic. Again, watch what they say and figure there's a good chance they're projecting. It's what they're doing, and they're projecting that on the president. Look, it was the Democrats were the only people who would not call out and condemn specific anti-Semitic remarks. And there's a price for not doing that.
I love it when Donald Trump said that Bibi Netanyahu was basically king of the Jews, right? As we basically say,
King of the Jews.
Your prime minister.
King of the Jews. He's the Jaffe
He's your
Joffer.
president, is what
He's your president.
He's the Jaffe Joffer of the Jews.
It is like, that's not any dumber than things Meghan McCain says, but
no.
Gomer's just a bit more of an obvious Gomer.
Oh,
right.
no.
But
Meghan McCain
also,
is just as
Gohmert
not
also
dumber.
knows that that the support for Israel in the Republican Party comes much more so from Christian Zionists.
Yeah, in East Texas.
Right.
Yeah.
To the extent that there's any Jews, they do recognize Christ as the Messiah. They are Jews for Jesus, which we call them. Yeah.
Why didn't you just leave Why didn't you just leave Auschwitz?
Just get out.
You just walk outside. Put that in the plan. Then you won't be able to give the booze to the whites and the blacks.
Donald Trump is going out on the campaign trail, and that means, and somebody pointed this out, like we hear a lot of like stuff about from, reports of him, he said this thing or he said that thing, and it's usually about like he's talking about the Mueller report or this and that, but nobody really reports anymore on the cascade of lies that he tells that are eaten up, conspiracy theories that are just eaten up by his supporters. I mean, I really do think that, Donald Trump could walk out of the White House tomorrow and, get on a rocket and fly into the sun, and we will still have massive problems that are indicative of the people who follow Donald Trump right now. And none of that's going to happen. He's going to stay in office. If he loses the election in 2020, he's either going to go to prison or not. Assuming he, is still alive, he's still going to be a malignant force in our politics. And that's the best case scenario.
Yeah.
Right? That's the best case scenario. So here he is telling I don't know how many people are in here, 12,000, 10,000, who knows? Auditorium, I don't know how many people are in it in Wisconsin, in Green Bay. When the president says something, people believe it. There's people out there who believe it. And they're going to believe, and we've heard it repeated by other Republican elected officials, that Democrats are for killing born people after the fact if they don't want their babies.
Born alive. The baby is born. The mother meets with the doctor. They take care of the baby. They wrap the baby beautifully. And then the doctor and the mother determine whether or not they will execute the baby. I don't think so. Incredible. No, it's incredible. Until this crazy man in Virginia said it, nobody even thought of that, right? Did anyone even think of that? You hear late term. But this is where the baby is actually born. It came out. It's there. It's wrapped. And that's it. Who believes it?
Nobody. Right. We do.
There are children who are born with either in great pain or with the inability, or with some grievous bodily malfunction that is going to either make their few days on this planet extremely painful or full of suffering, but who cannot survive. That I believe at that point, maybe in some there's a decision to not to feed or to heavily medicate. I'm not sure. It's not terribly dissimilar than what we get with people who are in a vegetative state. Terry Schiavo. The idea that there are summary executions taking place, I mean, it's obviously absurd, but all those people in that room believe it because the president just told them that. It's insanity. It really is insanity. Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 336 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm Thomas from North Carolina.
Thomas, what's on your mind?
Yeah, it's an example you use. You mention a coal miner displaced. This has to do with the Green New Deal outline from a while back. And, I mean, that was a couple of months ago. But you used the example the last week before your vacation. And the problem that I have with it is that
Can I just say what the it is? I think it's there's a certain amount of money that's set aside for retraining of people who will lose their jobs as a function of the Green New Deal, and that some of that money is also available to people who determine that they would rather take an early retirement. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
And so the way you described it was, it seemed like you were assuaging someone's concerns about, like, specifically the phrasing, unwilling to work. And what I feel like is it's the universality that, like, you need a universal program to actually get this result. Like, if you want these, like, displaced workers to get benefits, then you need a more universal program
Than the one proposed in, well, I mean, I think it gives you the option.
Can you explain the option?
Well, are you talking about,
when
you're saying not
option.
just people who are displaced because of energy shifts?
Well, yeah, what I mean is not it just seems like you're saying that this is supposed to very specifically, or that this is supposed to be specific to a small group of people. And
people who are displaced because of the green energy deal, as opposed to just saying you want to give everybody the option for an earlier retirement than, say, 62 that's provided by Social Security.
Yeah, not necessarily early retirement, but economic security in a sense, yeah. I mean, not necessarily unlike UBI, but I'm not a proponent of, like, Yang Bucks or whatever.
Okay, well, I'm not.
I'm just trying to make.
I'm not sure what the point is you're trying to make. You think that the Green New Deal should include some type of UBI?
Possibly. The example that I want to bring up is I read something about a Stephen Smith who was in the UK who had lung disease, arthritis, wheelchair bound, and tried to get benefits from the Department of Work and Pensions, and was evidently unable to work, but was declared fit to work. And so it just seems like whenever there's
I mean, honestly, I gotta.
Are we gonna run into a
I gotta
means?
jump. I gotta jump. But I gotta jump because I honestly, you're talking about a case in Britain where someone wanted disability from the government and they didn't pay it. I mean, we have Social Security disability here. I think it's a difficult program to get into. You get rejected multiple times on many occasions. I think some people during the recession, were more willing to try and go on disability. Some people, in other times are willing to work with a disability. It's very hard to measure how much pain should someone have to go through when they're working at certain points. But if you're talking about making that program more generous, I'm for that. I mean, I don't know what the complaint is.
I think his anxiety is over. Is there a means testing problem with that policy, specifically to jobs lost?
Well, I don't think it's a means. Oh, yeah, is it a function of specifically dealing with? Yes, I think it's tailored. My understanding is, and at least this portion of it, and I don't know. There may be another portion that provides job guarantees and whatnot. But I think the idea is specifically to alleviate the concerns, and there's a fairly narrow subset of people, right, who will lose their jobs because government will shut down their industry. And for those people, the idea is, what's the government going to do about that? Now, it's another separate set of questions as to, okay, well, what about people who want to take early retirement? I mean, you can call it what you want, but that's what it is. Unless you're talking about just a universal basic income. I don't think a universal basic income is going to supplant your need for a job anyways, even if you were to have that. So, I'm in favor of programs where maybe the government would support 4-day work weeks. But I don't know if there's an example of a program out there where basically willing to support everyone not working. I'm not sure. Maybe I misunderstood. Calling from a 410 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Pat from Maryland.
Pat from Maryland. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the She the People conference that Bernie was at this weekend. It's basically, I don't know if you saw it, but it's basically like
I know what you're talking about.
For women. For women of color. And honestly, I thought it was kind of a disaster for Bernie. He was kind of asked about white supremacist violence, and he proceeded to talk about $15 minimum wage. I don't know. He kind of seems sometimes that he seems kind of unwilling to kind of think of newer ideas. I don't know. Just wanted to get your guys' thoughts.
I didn't see it. I mean, in general, I don't know what you mean by newer ideas. I think his work in terms of civil rights is pretty old. Literally 50 years ago, he was strapping himself, chaining himself, in a fair housing fight, strapping himself to folks on a picket line, over fair housing. So I don't know what you mean by new ideas.
I did watch.
I guess what I mean is he could have easily said specifically talking about white supremacist violence that the FBI could set up a task force or something, but he kind of got booed for that, and I think he really needs to work on kind of, I don't know, I guess better messaging. I guess I don't know. I think there's certain points where you shouldn't go into the. $15 minimum wage is great and all, but I feel like you gotta, I don't know, kind of I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
I did watch
hope you
some of
understand.
that. I did watch some of that, and I think I would also spend. My friend, Bree Joy is Bernie's national press secretary now, and they are putting out a really good podcast called Hear the Burn, and it's actually like it's policy focused, and it interviews and talks with a lot of people who are doing things with the campaign in a variety of different ways. Obviously, it's pro his campaign, but she just did a very good episode on the erasure of his broader base of support, and I think to constantly reaffirm that he has a problem in those answers is a self-fulfilling prophecy. And I also think, to be, blunt, Joy Reid's one of the moderators. She doesn't like Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
And has been highly publicly so. And there was a moment when he referenced his college activism, and the audience started to boo. And it's like, okay, I mean, sure, you want to hear something, present, but at the same time, I doubt any other candidate would have gotten booed for referencing that work and marching with Dr. King. So I think you have to look at the specifics of that forum as well.
Appreciate the call.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, thanks.
I got to watch it. I mean, it's hard to comment, but I think, yes, there is. My sense is that from what I know about that conference, it was not necessarily home turf. And the idea that, people are booing him for referencing, a 50-year commitment to this stuff is, it makes you wonder if they're being a little bit disingenuous. With that
Absolutely.
said, look, I think
also, do you think, I'm not to jump on the caller, but I am a little, look, there's no question that reconstituting what the Trump administration has disbanded in terms of keeping an eye on right-wing terrorism, of course, but I don't really like the idea of an answer for anything to always be like, oh, we should have a new, give more power to the FBI as an example. I have a bit of an allergy to that, Frank.
Well, the DOJ shut down
that's
the
what
task force.
I'm talking about, being clear on the restoration of things like that. Absolutely. But to just sort of generically call for,
I think that's what the caller was
Pete
talking
Buttigieg referenced in his, offhandedly, but he actually referenced some of his counterinsurgency work in the military being applied to an American context. I find that to be rather disturbing.
Inappropriate. Yeah. Calling from a 954 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sammy, it's Michael from Miami.
Michael from Miami. Long time no talk to.
Buddy, where were you? You were in my home state. You up north near Mouseville, or you down closer to us?
Jupiter.
Oh, beautiful. Right in the same SMSA. Very nice.
Yeah.
Hope you had a good time. Weather was pretty decent for you.
Weather was great. Like I say, I did not get the rest I had dreamed about, but Saul learned to swim, and so that's all I cared about.
Outstanding. Might get some grapefruits to take back with you. Otherwise, I'll be happy to submit and ship them off to you. And I'll make sure they're Florida ones this time. You have my word.
Is this the guy is this Mike's the guy that just went to the supermarket and was like, here's some oranges.
California oranges from
Dude,
Florida.
you got to pick them off of the tree, man.
Dude, you got to go to Central Florida to do that, and there's a lot of my clients who are getting hurt doing that kind of job, and they're getting killed on workers' compensation. That's another story for another day. Anyway. Listen,
nice
the big
pull.
thing down here is well, no, I was going to say the big thing down here is the hacking story that I guess you guys talked about. I picked up the show halfway. It's literally though. Can you believe they said that type of thing? But I guess it bears repeating that they basically. I suppose the FBI kind of warned Florida officials back in 2016 that there was evidence of improper Russian.
My understanding is the FBI in 2016 warned Florida generally that there is, but they had evidence, according to Marco Rubio, they had evidence that the Russians hacked into specific counties.
One in particular, and I think it's going to be my county, unfortunately, which was probably the one that was targeted because it's the largest Democratic county. What they did is they didn't go in to change voter tabulation. They went in to mess with voter registration information. Allegedly, that's the guys. The thing that's bothersome is Well, Nelson actually came out and talked about it last year, if you remember.
Yep.
And he was essentially written off as being, a doddering fool who was kind of a sore loser, which tells me that had Obama come forward in 2016 and done what we wanted him to do in terms of publicizing what was going on with the FBI at that point in time, the same reaction would come forth.
Well, that is, Rod Rosenstein is now going around.
They cannot figure out a way to counter the narrative once it's thrown back at them, even if they have the facts on their side. It's maddening.
Well, Rod Rosenstein is out there now criticizing the Obama administration for not coming out and being more forceful. But people forget, and Rod Rosenstein clearly does not forget, but now knows where his toast is buttered, as it were, that Mitch McConnell basically said, if you come out and announce this, I'm going to make it like you're politicizing it.
Exactly. But you know what? So what?
Well,
so what?
Yep.
You go out there, and this is the same argument I hear against impeachment. We can't do it because he'll be acquitted by the Senate and he'll use it as a campaign ploy. He's going to do that anyway.
Right.
He's going to do that anyway. Stand up, grow a pair, do your constitutional duty, and put the son of a bitch on trial.
Yep.
This is what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to sit there and play the fair winds of the day. This is what infuriates so many of us.
I agree total. My only hesitation about actually taking a vote for impeachment, like I would go right up to the line of the process and maybe say we're going to take the vote in January of 2022, just because I don't want a situation where you impeach this guy and then he doesn't get convicted in the Senate and then he gets reelected. I want that.
All right, wait a minute. We're talking about two different things, though. Okay.
Right.
If you have a trial, because that's what an impeachment is. An impeachment is a trial. You put evidence in front of, allegedly the jury, which is supposed to be the Senate. We all know this is a bit of a kangaroo court because of the political proclivities involved.
Right.
But you put evidence in front there, and everybody sees what's going on. You cross-examine witnesses. If they want to take the Fifth Amendment, they can do so at their own peril. You can offer them immunity. It's the same as any other criminal trial, okay? Right. And then you let the public at large make a determination. And if that, at that point, becomes overwhelming, that the people say, well, you know what, he's going to get reelected because we don't think the evidence was there, and I've heard this on your show as well. I think you guys, Michael especially, has been on board as saying the entire Trump coverage, the Russia coverage was overblown, it was overdone. I personally disagree, but this is why I like you guys. You're like family members. I love you to death. I don't agree with you on everything, but it's good to hear different points of view articulately explained. My position is I think you need to investigate this to the hilt, and you need to put the information out there so people can make a determination on their own. Okay? He's going to get those 37% anyway. I don't give a fuck.
Well, no. You're missing my point. I'm not worried that he's going to benefit electorally from the impeachment. And I think we should go through the process. What I am afraid of is put aside how it impacts his reelection. Who knows? Maybe he wins by 3 votes in Michigan again, you know what I mean? And loses by 5 million. But he wins the Electoral College. What I'm worried about is not having impeachment in your quiver if he gets reelected. So I would take the proceedings up until the point where you actually do the vote, because you want to save the vote to actually impeach him after that election. One way or another. I would impeach him after he gets elected. I mean, or he loses the election.
You can impeach people more than once, you know that, right? I mean, there's nothing that says, look, you have a myriad of offenses, obstruction-wise, and emoluments clause-wise, right now to sit there and impeach this guy from now until the cows come home. You don't have to do it just once. You realize that, right? Obviously.
Well, yeah. I mean, but it's also like, what do you think the Democrats, if they impeach him in October of 20 or whatever it is, August of 2020, and he gets reelected, you think they're going to go back to that?
No.
Nancy Pelosi will put on a MAGA hat, dude.
Right, exactly.
Chuck Schumer will be like, and we need to tighten the border.
But that's my only argument. But this is more of like a technical argument. I mean, honestly, I think the investigation should start. I view impeachment as a process. I say start the process. Get the investigation.
Started.
Well, yes, it has. Yes.
These hearings are the whole point.
Yeah.
I mean, well, the one's not going to take place. Now, the one thing you guys touched on, which I totally agree with, this federal judiciary, and I don't know if the gang agrees, but I know I agree with you on this, Sam. The federal judiciary has been completely corrupted and is now essentially a mutant version of the Republican Party, because every federal society judge, and there have been thousands of them now that are going to be, well, not thousands, but hundreds are going to be, confirmed, thanks to Schmucky Chucky's, decision to go ahead and let those guys do what they wanted to, is going to rue the day, because they will now run to every federal society appointed judge, and they will sit there and say executive privilege exists. They'll come up with new precedent, and they are designed to keep those guys in power. That's the ultimate firewall. And you know who you blame for that? I blame Barack Obama for that, for not standing up and
Fuck you, white boy. Keep my name out your mouth.
Yeah, I know.
There was obstruction. But wait a second. But there's a lot of hold on. Wait.
To make these recess appointments. Why didn't you do that?
Well, the recess appointments, the Supreme Court basically decided that was not an option.
No, you can do it on any federal level too, my friend. Any federal level.
Yeah, but the Supreme Court. No. The Supreme Court took away recess appointments. The Supreme Court took away.
Not at the time. In 2016.
Yeah, the Supreme Court took away recess appointments because it basically said that the McConnells pretend I'm in recess, whatever it is. We send somebody over there for like a half an hour or something, was legit. And so he couldn't do recess appointments. It basically neutered the recess appointments. The thing I do blame Obama for.
I apologize. I thought it was after the election. Okay.
But the thing I do blame Obama for is they were very, very slow in nominating people. It's true there was a lot of obstruction. They just did not put the focus on it on day one the way they should have. And they were very, 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 very slow. Very slow. And people were saying this contemporaneously, too. So this is not a retroactive criticism. This is not Monday morning quarterbacking. This is Sunday afternoon quarterbacking. People said it at the time. He's doing this too slowly. They're doing an incompetent job of this. And it goes to my biggest complaint. And Michael, I've been making this complaint for over a decade. The left, broadly speaking, does not understand and appreciate the importance of the judiciary, the federal judiciary in particular, but also
we are in line, my friend. I agree. They don't. And the problem
not
is
institutionally, not in terms of the voters, not in terms of the politicians. Nobody.
Because it's too esoteric a concept to understand unless you actually have cases which are being adjudicated. Now people are starting to figure it out. Everybody and their mother in these red states is now passing restrictive abortion policies. Why is that? Why do you think they're doing that? They're setting up because they want to run it to the Supremes. Of course, everybody understands that. And whether they lose at the DCA level is immaterial. The bigger problem is you have other decisions, like for instance, the contempt of Congress, which we're now looking at. You can't imagine, you can't think of a situation when a president would voluntarily ignore and direct his staff not to comply with congressional subpoenas. They impeached Nixon. That's the third count of the article impeachments against him.
Yep.
It would be inconceivable that anybody would want to do that. But they're doing it because they're going to try to play a hometown game and get themselves on favorable ground, get enough of a decision so that they can somehow carve out some kind of unique judicial history. You were the first one on that, or you were one of the first ones on that, and I appreciate that. But it's incredibly frustrating. Look, before you guys go, I'm just curious, what is your thoughts regarding Obama's circular firing squad comments where they were made in Europe over? I don't know if you're on vacation when that took place. I have a feeling I know where you're going to go on this, but I'd like to hear what you have to say.
I mean, with all due respect to Obama, there is no indication that this guy has any expertise when it comes to getting Democrats elected if it's not him.
Correct. Yep.
And
he's the only president with reverse coattails.
Yeah.
He really is.
And so, I mean, I seems like a nice guy. But I just don't understand. I think it would be very helpful for him to go out and campaign to a certain extent. But
for whom? He won't endorse Biden because he's going to play his cards close to the vest.
Well, I'm saying in the general election, he should be out there campaigning.
Oh.
But if he wants to go back and think about electing a Democrat, here's an idea. Jettison the TPP and don't put Hillary Clinton having to, deal with that. That hurt her campaign quite a bit. There I mean,
so does her inability to articulate a message from here to there.
Well, no, there's 100 other problems too. But I'm just saying, you know, Barack Obama can't control what Hillary Clinton says, but he can control the context in which, you know, as president, what he makes her, you know, what he subjects her to. That's a big issue. That would have been one thing that he could have personally done. I mean, talk about, you know, firing squad. He basically loaded up people's weapons, you know, in that respect.
He continues to see criticism of Democratic candidates as being somehow injurious to their candidacy simply because they're being made by other Democratic candidates. That's just not the way it works.
Right.
He doesn't understand. He doesn't understand the realities of how the political give and take go. That's why he was such a crappy negotiator. He was a terrible negotiator.
Great at getting himself elected.
Republicanism that somehow the other side is operating in good faith, when in fact it was obvious long into his presidency that they weren't, and he still operates that way.
Yep.
Well, they're not going to like us because, you know, we're tending to take shots at one another. No, we're not. You're pointing out legitimate policy differences. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nothing
he
wrong
doesn't
with
get
it.
that. I don't understand why he's dense like that.
I mean, look, listen again. This is one of those things where it's like, is Barack Obama dense about that? I don't think so. I think Barack Obama has an agenda.
Then he's a coward. Take your pick. He's either cowardly or dense.
There's a third option. There's a third option. Those are his politics.
Yeah,
and the best way to get politics that maintain the status quo is to say we shouldn't be debating about stuff. And that way you don't have to make it seem like you have any politics. Like listen, I mean, look, if there's a, you know, if the status quo is the one that you want, where in the status quo we have in this country is that powerful interests end up getting what they want, that money has more power in our democracy than it should, but certainly more power than not having money. If your politics are such that you like that, you don't have to come out and say, I like that. You just say, we need to just calm down and not rock the boat and not have this internal debate. That's what you do. That's what, and that is why we always hear that supposed.
There's another option.
Well, and also, and just let me just add really quickly, and also, if the problem I have with it, because I think that there is some value to thinking strategically and being less sort of at each other's throats in certain circumstances, but it never goes the other way. I mean, if Obama was really holding to this, I'm an elder statesman and we need to defeat the Republicans and we need to have this grand coalition, blah, 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 he would have released a press release when that New York Times piece came out about the Democrats, you know, converging to try to stop Bernie. And he would say, this is also unacceptable. We can't do things like this. It's always in the service of his wing, like Sam was saying. So it's disingenuous.
Have you ever had professors of yours who were bright guys, but once you put them out in the real world, they were incapable of functioning? They were just brilliant theoreticians, but they could not function in the practical reality once confronted. I think that's who he is.
I
don't think he did those things because he was reticent or beholden to money interest, which I think is true, by the way, to a point. I think he didn't know what to do. I really think he was paralyzed and afraid and didn't know what to do, so he did nothing.
I just find that hard to believe. I mean, this is a smart guy who through his life,
who never ran anything in his life. Sammy, go back and read the stuff. I like him too. I voted for him twice. But he never ran anything. He fell into a U.S. Senate seat.
Watch the interview. Here. I got a random reference for you though, but I think this ends this conversation. Several years ago, Ehud Olmert was at the 42nd Street Y or whatever it is, and the moderator said, "Is Obama naive to deal with Iran?" And he looks at him and he goes, "I've known a lot of presidents, and this is first black president. He might be wrong, but he's not naive."
Yeah,
this is not a naive guy.
No, he's not.
You're
naive.
giving him too much credit.
You could say that he doesn't have but his, the agencies all worked perfectly fine. I don't think that what he lacked was managerial skill. I think that he fundamentally,
right?
I think fundamentally, he accepted the worldview of a powerful moneyed interests, bankers, right? Like he let this guy Froman, who ended up being his trade guy, who was at Citigroup at the time, essentially pick his cabinet.
Yeah.
This is a guy who came from nothing, who worked his way through Harvard into Harvard Law to the head of be the first black Harvard Law Review. This is not a guy who's naive, who doesn't understand the different interests around the room. I just happen to think that he's the type of guy who also believed that all the people around him deserved to be there, maybe in the same way that he was. And that's a way that, he reflected upon himself. I'll tell you this. A guy.
I agree. I think there's academic success. Look, dude, I was.
But it's not academic.
Okay?
He also was a listen.
I know what to take.
He was in
It's a far
Chicago
different skill
politics.
set to be able to get on law review than it is to be able to go ahead and run negotiate in such a way so as to actually promulgate your position.
Michael.
in an aggressive manner.
It's a different skill set to become on law review if you're a white guy than it is a black guy at Harvard. I can assure you
Harvard,
that.
buddy. Come on. They operate differently. They're magnanimous to the nth degree. They're open to.
How is it that Barack Obama was the first guy?
I'm not saying he wasn't deserving.
No, I'm not saying that he was. I'm not talking about deserving. I'm saying that to operate in that world as a black man, there is a skill set that you need to have that you don't have if you're white.
You mean horse trading, understanding other positions, learning how to take positions,
Reading
that
a
aren't necessarily
room,
yours.
knowing
Yeah,
knowing
I
who,
understand that.
knowing how to get along, to move upward, and that always worked for him. And I think that's what he brought into the White House. And I think he never was in a position of questioning. Like, the irony is that what he did not have was the fierce urgency of now. That is the one thing he actually did not have. It was the fierce, the semi-fierce urgency of within the next week.
Soon.
We'll work on it.
Appreciate the call, Michael.
All right, bye, Mike.
Always a pleasure.
Keep my name out your mouth.
Appreciate it.
Don't ever talk about my law school record again.
I just think that to talk about Barack Obama as a bookish sort of that is not him.
Hey, I'm just reading books over here. More I should have talked about ideas instead of people.
I just don't think that captures the essence of him.
I thought they were going to be nice guys.
I think he
but
had
they weren't.
politics. I don't think that they were sinister. I think just his worldview. I mean, I'll tell you this.
Why don't we have a book reading club together?
I've been crushing it.
Yeah,
Those books.
Yeah, crushing the books. Maybe we can have a book reading club. We could solve our problems together.
I think Obama is actually launching a book club now in the style of
course
Oprah.
he is.
Oh boy.
Could Harry Reid bring over Mitch McConnell? Could have a book reading club. We could read Team Rivals together.
This is a good catch by our friends over at TYT. They have it doesn't get as much attention as it probably should, but they do some. Ken Klippenstein and a couple other guys in that TYT Investigates division. They do some serious reporting, not just like the pontificating that we do here. And one of them came out of this town hall, which I did not see, with Mayor Pete. America loves mayors. And then they don't go very far. And remember America's mayor? But I don't know if this is a big deal yet, but it could be. So there's a controversy about when Buttigieg was mayor, and he fired an African American police chief, and there was a lot of it's unclear to me. There was secret tapes involved that people had done of this commissioner. I don't even know what the controversy was, to be honest with you. I got to read into it. But one thing that came out though is I'm looking for this now. So somebody asked him about it at the town hall, and Buttigieg. Basically, had this to say about that controversy.
Thing on there that we need to be concerned about. The reason I demoted the chief was that I found out that he was the subject of a criminal investigation, not from him, but from the FBI, and it made it very hard for me to trust him as one of my own appointees. It was frustrating and painful too, though. He was the first African-American chief in our city's history. And one of the reasons I had asked him to serve in the first place in my administration was a great track record in community policing, which is a huge priority for us because we're a racially diverse community. And speaking of things you learn along the way, and in particular, lessons I learned the hard way as a mayor, one of the things I realized was that while I was absorbed in just making sure that we weren't tripping on any landmines related to laws about what you can and can't record, I was, frankly, a little bit slow to understand just how much anguish underlay the community's response to this. Because for people in the community, it wasn't just about whether we were right or wrong to be concerned about the Federal Wiretap Act. It was about whether communities of color could trust that police departments had their best interests at heart. And the more I learned about that, the more I realized that lifting the veil of mistrust between communities of color and our police department had to be one of my top priorities as mayor.
All right, so that's good rhetoric. But apparently, what happened is that there were tapes that were made of white police officers, and I'm not sure exactly who was responsible for the tapes. It could have been the FBI. I'm not sure. I can't seem to find that. But there were tapes being made that showed some of these white police officers were pretty racist. And when they came out, Buttigieg, it appears, sided with those officers in demoting the chief, Darrell Boykins. Boykins ultimately went on to sue, saying that he was wrongfully demoted due to his race and won a settlement for $50,000. So apparently, TYT reached out to his lawyer, this guy, Tom Dixon, to ask, is it the case that Boykins was the subject of an FBI investigation? And according to the lawyer, who it's unclear why he would have any reason to lie at this point, the answer is no. Now, it's, I think, highly unlikely that the FBI would be investigating this guy and would have told Buttigieg about it, but not the guy and his lawyer, that he was the subject of investigation. In fact, it turns out that, according to the lawyer, that, quote, Darrell was never a subject. He was fully cooperating witness to a taping system that had been in place for the prior two administrations. So apparently this taping system of taping the cops was already been in there for, well before this guy's term. And some of it came out that there was some racial issues with some of these officers. And it looks like Buttigieg demoted the chief as the fall guy.
Wait, black chief demoted to protect racism in a police department and then blamed with fake FBI investigation? Get Mayor Pete on the phone. This is a great guy.
I like his style.
This is a great American.
All right, folks, we don't, I don't know. There's going to be more to this story. And it's good that he Buttigieg, I understand why he's doing okay in the polls right now, because he answered that question pretty well, right? Unless he lied, and that comes out that he lied. He's so whack. But we'll see. All right, that's it we have for calls right now, folks. I'm sorry. Let's take this. Let's do this. I just don't want people to have to hold on anymore, but I do want to do this last. That's it. I think we're done for video today. But let's take a couple IMs, and then we'll get out of here. Glass of water. Would love to hear your thoughts about China's IP theft. Also, for Michael, could you talk about Adam Conover's appearance on JRE?
I don't know what that is.
Joe Rogan Experience is JRE, but I don't know who.
Adam Conover? I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
I don't really have any thoughts on China's IP theft. I mean, that's a pretty broad topic.
China, Sam was pissed about it.
I can't.
Like, I heard about China's IP theft and it ruined my vacation.
I can't criticize because I have illegally downloaded programs on my computer too.
I mean, I think I don't even like the idea of intellectual property. I think we have an overly protective patent regime, and copyright regime in this country. I would like to reform that first before I worry about before I worry about China.
There was a great piece in the Jacobin.
Knocking off Avengers, whatever the latest Avengers movie is.
There was a great piece in the Jacobin about how you needed to basically recreate the internet as a commons in order to stop the global cyber war, essentially. So that would be worth looking up.
JJ Cool. Hi, Sam. If you were nominated for the Supreme Court, would you turn it down? Just wondering why Judge Nappy would burn his best opportunity. Lastly, would you guys mind speculating whether Jamie will support Biden in the primaries? Glad you're back live. I can tell you that Jamie probably will not support Biden in the primaries. I don't know what Judge Nappy's doing. Donald Trump. Love watching Meghan McCain clips. It makes me feel so smart, even if I have to change my briefs afterward for laughing so hard. Also, is she carbo loading to bulk? Okay. One night lemon stand. I'm so damn disgusted with Sam. Michael Tracy came on to discuss an apology ode to the Majority Report audience for Seder's dedicating almost 0.5% of MR episodes over a 2-year period to talking with Marcy Wheeler about an investigation into the President of the United States possibly being in cahoots with a foreign power. During this interview, Seder promised Tracy, point blank, that an apology would be forthcoming for petulantly mentioning Maxine Waters and the time Tracy exposed the overwhelming physicality with which the strapping 78-year-old congresswoman had touched the blogger's arm. Something which, in Tracy's own words, fell only just short of extreme violence. Now, considering Michael Tracy proclaimed to have tweets in which it would shed a clarifying light on the context and make it plain Seder was in the wrong, further said he'd provide this crucial context to Sam in the very near term, considering Sam agreed to apologize once those exonerating tweets verified Tracy's claim. Also, okay, I can't even get through all the rest.
Good, it was a good run.
Good. Pajama Boy, have you seen Michael Tracy's Twitter lately? Is Mueller the only thing he focuses on?
I saw Donald Trump Jr. I have an account that shows you what tweets Donald Trump Jr. and
I
those
saw
people
that
like
too.
it, and he's liking Michael Tracy's tweets now.
I know, I saw that. Jay Tingle. Important to spend time on the Stephanopoulos trick, but also take a moment to observe how the Times covered Trump's claim that a woman and her doctor deliver a baby and then decide whether or not to execute the child. Oh, no. Fact check. At a rally on Saturday in Green Bay, Trump revived an inaccurate refrain about doctors executing babies. Oh, my God.
This all gives me a flashback to in 2011 over the summer. I was a fact checker in London, and a lot of the fact checks were about the Euroscepticism and like, are they going to make us like not be able to have curved bananas and stuff like that? And then Brexit happened. So
revived an inaccurate refrain about doctors executing babies. This is what I say to my kids.
It's time for that good old inaccurate refrain now.
Kids,
people love a good inaccurate refrain.
Look at me. You better not be telling me some type of inaccurate refrain. I don't want any of that revival of inaccurate refrains around this house. Wow. But they just want, the thing is that what the Times is also trying to do is they're trying not to put on airs. They just want to talk like normal people. It's really true. The way Rubin steps all over Michael's bit reminds me of the time Joe Cocker appeared on SNL with Belushi doing his Joe Cocker bit. It was actually a little uncomfortable at the time.
Exactly.
Jedrick, Jalcom Jack. It's a welcome back, but for Jews.
Still makes slightly more sense, actually.
Deadbeat dadism. I wonder if Joe Biden's going to try and float the idea of Anita Hill as his VP pick for governor.
Ask Anita Hill. Did he talk to you about it? No.
I like Joe saying, yeah, I told Obama just stay out of it for the primary.
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't even take it even if he asked, for sure. No way.
Bravo-matic. When the free half runs as long as it did today, it's a real slap in the face for those of us who pay to hear the fun half. Also, did you know that Dorr left TYT? Yeah, I heard that. Yep. It really, doesn't make a huge difference to me personally. I mean, I don't think it's going to change what Jimmy does in any way, which, you know, I have my problems with. But, you know, Godspeed. Ayn Rand Paul Ryan. I'm getting a degree in engineering at the University of Manitoba, and I pay $5,000 a year for tuition before awards and bursaries. I cannot even comprehend paying $75,000 a year for school. Unreal. Smoot Court. Glenn Greenwald said the Mueller report obliterated the theory that Trump is beholden to Putin. Please answer that claim. I don't know that that's the case. I mean, it obliterated the theory that the Trump campaign coordinated with Russia in their interference in the election. I don't even know if the idea that, I mean, if Trump felt beholden to Putin because all Trump cares about is his own personal business dealings and was trying to get a $300 million hotel built in Moscow and knows that nothing like that could happen without Putin's sign off, does he feel beholden? I mean, I guess it depends on what you define as beholden. I mean, if Michael wants a raise from me, is he beholden to me? No, but is he going to, you know, do stuff like show up at work? You know, more. I mean, theoretically,
I don't know. I don't know if this is a strong one to build your case on.
But you know, so I don't know. I don't think the Mueller report obliterated anything, frankly. Depressive regressive. How can we see your post-coital scene? Sounds pretty sexy. I don't know that you can. It was a pilot. Leaf Sage. Can you imagine either of the Obama girls demanding public respect and validation in the way that Meghan McCain does?
No.
No. Could you imagine the reaction?
To be honest, I can't even see Abby Huntsman doing it.
Right.
So I can't even get to the point you're trying to make.
Right. Can you imagine if black women acted with that kind of entitlement while constantly invoking their father's name? Come to think of it, Silver Spoon Sasha Obama sounds like a great character for.
Say that's where I was going. My father, Barack Obama. I know a little bit about Saudi Arabia. It's all the defense, like the Saudi. My dad knows the Saudi royal family, so they're kind of close to us.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, and it's just very scary to me that people are demonizing the Saudi royal family. It's very frightening.
It's super easy to sit here and judge like we shouldn't bomb Yemen, but you have no idea what it looks like from the Saudi court.
Yeah, maybe if you lived in the Saudi court, you would understand. So, like, Prince Bandar is like an uncle to me. What's disturbing is that could just as easily be Meghan McCain or Ivanka Trump or the Bush daughters. Yeah.
Oh, Matt, I didn't mean to. Oh, Michael, it was great to meet you in L.A. Matt, I didn't mean to meet you because you looked busy at the bar. Didn't want to interrupt, but wow, breaking girlfriend news. Can we get a shofar? Matt, is there something you want to talk about from L.A.?
I mean, I had the girlfriend when I went out there too. I had to find. It's now just available for public perusal now.
All right, 3 more of these and we'll get out of here. Brad Hominem. Sam, my conservative friend, says that student debt is 44% of the federal government's assets. Getting rid of all of it will crash the nation. What can I say to that? This. Her plan calls for, I mean, if he's really concerned about that, her plan calls for raising taxes on the millionaires and billionaires with over $25 million worth of, was it $25 or $30 million worth of wealth? 75,000 families. And it will more than cover the cost. It will double cover the cost because she's got other plans. Sam's Tinder profile. Hey girl, swipe left for the redacted report or swipe right and see how little evidence there is of obstruction between you, me, and just us. Well, that's pretty good. Just us.
Just us.
Yeah. And the final I am of the day. Sam went to a Bernie kickoff event in Denver this weekend, and there was no one home at the address given to us by Bernie's website. Thought it might be just a blip, and then I saw a number of people posting on Facebook that it happened in other cities. Dirty tricks are already starting. I don't know what that's about, but we'll look into it.
Someone doing fake Bernie events to...
Ah. All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bulb, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the